It begins with the aroma of coffee, a familiar ritual to start the day. The cup is warm in your hands, a small promise of focus and energy. But before the first sip, a vibration, a screen lights up. An email from your boss, marked urgent. Another vibration, breaking news, a headline designed to alarm. A third, a cascade of notifications from social media, a curated stream of other people's perfect moments. The coffee, intended as a moment of quiet pleasure, becomes mere fuel, swallowed quickly to keep up with a race that had already started without you. This feeling is deeply familiar to so many of us. It is the hum of modern life, a low-grade anxiety that has become our constant companion. We are living in an age of profound overload, yet we feel strangely empty. We chase more, we accumulate more, we connect more, yet we feel more disconnected than ever. Our minds are like a cup, already filled to the brim with information, with worries, with plans and regrets, and still, the world demands we pour more in. We are thirsty, but we keep drinking salt water. The result is a quiet exhaustion, a feeling of being adrift in a world that is both deafeningly loud and spiritually silent. But what if there was another way? What if the solution wasn't to add more, to learn a new productivity hack, or to chase the next fleeting pleasure? What if the solution was to simply stop, to sit down, and to notice the cup is already full? This is an invitation to a different kind of conversation. It takes place in the stillness that follows the noise. It begins with another cup, not of coffee, but of tea. The steam rises in a slow, deliberate dance. There are no notifications here. There is only the warmth, the aroma, and the present moment. This is the path offered by the ancient wisdom of Zen Buddhism, a timeless art of finding peace, not by changing the world outside, but by understanding the world within. This is not a lecture, nor a sermon. It is a quiet dialogue over a cup of tea about the art of being truly alive. It is a journey to find the stillness that waits patiently for you, beneath the chaotic surface of your own mind. Let us return to the image of the cup, not the frantic coffee cup of the morning rush, but the quiet teacup we now hold. We have acknowledged that it is full, overflowing with the anxieties and distractions of the world. The most natural question then arises, what do we do about it? How do we handle this state of being perpetually overwhelmed? There is a story in the Zen tradition, a very old and simple story that holds the key to this first, most essential step. It speaks of a university professor, a man of great learning and reputation, who came to visit a wise old master. He came not with an empty mind, but with a mind full of questions, theories, and a desire to display his own considerable knowledge of philosophy and spirituality. He arrived at the master's simple hut, and after the initial greetings, he began to speak. He spoke of the texts he had read, of the complex doctrines he had studied, of his own interpretations of the nature of reality. He talked and talked, a torrent of words and concepts, barely pausing for breath. The Zen master listened patiently, his face calm and unreadable. While the professor spoke, the master prepared tea. He brought out 2 simple ceramic cups and a steaming pot. As the professor continued his long and elaborate monologue, the master began to pour the tea into his guest's cup. He poured, and the amber liquid rose to the brim. And then, he kept pouring. The tea spilled over the edge of the cup, running down its sides, forming a puddle on the wooden table and dripping onto the floor. The professor, shocked out of his lecture, cried out, "Stop! It's full! No more will go in." The master stopped pouring, looked at the professor, and then at the overflowing cup. He smiled gently and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. You come to me with a cup that is already overflowing. How can I show you anything about Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story, in its profound simplicity, is the starting point of our entire journey. The professor represents all of us in our modern condition. We are experts. We have spent our entire lives accumulating information, forming opinions, building a complex structure of beliefs about ourselves and the world. From a young age, we learn to label everything. This is good, this is bad. This is right, this is wrong. I am this type of person, you are that type of person. This process is necessary for survival. Our brain creates mental shortcuts to navigate a complex reality. We don't need to relearn that a hot stove will burn us every day. We carry this knowledge, this expertise, with us. In our careers, this expert mind is celebrated. It allows us to solve problems, to be efficient, to be productive. But a tool that is useful in one area of life can become a prison when it is applied to all of it. The danger of the expert mind is that it closes us off from reality itself. We stop experiencing the world directly. Instead, we experience our thoughts about the world. We see a sunset, and the expert mind immediately kicks in. Oh, a sunset. The colors aren't as good as yesterday. I should take a picture for social media. I wonder what filter to use. The direct, breathtaking experience of the light and color is lost, buried under a heap of analysis, comparison, and planning. We meet a new person, and our expert mind scans them, categorizing them based on their clothes, their accent, their job title, comparing them to people we have known in the past. We don't meet the person, we meet our pre-existing concept of that type of person. The expert mind lives in a world of symbols, not substance. It is constantly confirming what it already believes to be true, and it is very good at filtering out any information that contradicts its established views. It creates a comfortable, predictable bubble of reality, but the price of this comfort is life itself. We become like a tourist who spends their entire trip looking at a map instead of the scenery right in front of them. The antidote to this is a concept at the very heart of Zen, known as Shoshin. It translates as beginner's mind. To cultivate a beginner's mind is not to become ignorant or foolish. It is the opposite. It is the practice of setting aside our assumptions, our expertise, our preconceived notions, and looking at the world with the fresh, open, and curious eyes of a true beginner. There is a famous saying, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." The child sees a puddle not as a nuisance, but as a tiny ocean to be explored. They see a cardboard box, not as trash, but as a spaceship or a castle. Their world is alive with possibility, because it has not yet been calcified by labels and judgments. Shoshin is the conscious act of returning to that state of wonder. It is the humility to say, "I don't know," even about subjects we think we know well. It is an act of intellectual and spiritual courage, a willingness to be vulnerable and open to being surprised by life. This is not just an abstract idea, it is a practice, something we can actively cultivate in our day-to-day lives. You can begin right now. Consider the act of listening. When you are in a conversation, especially with someone you know well like a partner or a family member, notice the tendency of your expert mind. As they speak, are you truly listening, or are you preparing your response? Are you filtering their words through a history of past arguments and assumptions? The practice of Shoshin is to listen as if you have never heard this person speak before, to let go of what you think they are going to say, and to simply receive the words, the tone, the silence between the words, as they are. This simple shift can transform relationships, dissolving old patterns of conflict and creating space for genuine connection. Or consider the simple act of eating. We often eat on autopilot, our minds 1,000 miles away, scrolling on our phones or worrying about the future. To eat with a beginner's mind is to rediscover the miracle of food. Take a single raisin, for example. Look at it as if you are an alien from another planet who has never seen such an object. Notice its texture, its wrinkles, the way the light reflects off its surface. Feel its weight in your hand. Smell it. Then, place it in your mouth, but don't chew it right away. Just notice the sensation of it on your tongue. Then, slowly, begin to chew, paying full attention to the explosion of sweetness, the changing texture. You will find that you have never truly tasted a raisin before. This practice can be applied to anything, to your morning shower, to the walk to your car, to the feeling of your hands on a keyboard. It is the art of waking up from the trance of routine. Emptying your cup does not mean rejecting the knowledge you have acquired. The professor does not have to renounce his learning. He simply has to put it aside for a moment. He has to create a space, a quiet clearing in the dense forest of his own intellect. This is the first step, because without this space, nothing new can enter. Wisdom cannot be poured into a full cup. Peace cannot be found in a mind already crowded with noise. Before we can explore the nature of our thoughts and feelings, before we can find an anchor in the present moment, we must first be willing to become a beginner. We must have the courage to look at our own overflowing cup and say, perhaps, I don't know. In that admission, in that humble, open space, the entire journey becomes possible. Having acknowledged the necessity of this emptiness, of this beginner's mind, we are naturally led to the next question. Once we have quieted the expert, once we have paused the endless inner monologue, what do we find in the space that remains? What are the currents, the waves, the deep and powerful movements that were always there, hidden beneath the surface of our full cup? To find out, we must now turn our gentle, curious attention toward the very nature of our mind itself. With our cup now empty, with the open and curious spirit of a beginner, we turn our gaze inward. For the first time perhaps, we are not trying to fix, to change, or to judge what we find. We are simply looking, and what we see is a spectacle of immense activity. Thoughts, memories, images, and emotions surge and recede in a ceaseless, chaotic flow. It is like looking at a waterfall or a highway at rush hour. The sheer volume and speed of the traffic within our own minds can be shocking. For centuries, Buddhist teachers have used a wonderfully accurate term for this phenomenon, the monkey mind. It describes the restless, agitated state of the ordinary, untrained mind, swinging wildly from one thought branch to another without pause. Imagine a monkey in a vast jungle. It leaps from a branch laden with the fruit of a past regret to a vine of anxious projection about the future. It screeches at a memory of an old argument, then becomes distracted by the glittering leaf of a fleeting fantasy. It never rests. It is constantly in motion, driven by impulse and reaction. This is a perfect metaphor for our inner world. One moment, you are trying to focus on a task at hand, and the next, your mind is rehearsing a conversation that might happen tomorrow. Then it jumps to a song you heard on the radio, then to a flicker of self-doubt about something you did a decade ago, then to a grocery list. This is not a personal failing. It is not a sign that you are broken or uniquely undisciplined. It is simply the nature of the mind when it is left to its own devices. It is a brilliant survival mechanism gone into overdrive. This constant internal chatter is the source of the deep exhaustion we feel, a hidden expenditure of energy that drains us day by day. We are not tired from our lives so much as we are tired from our minds. For most of our lives, we are completely identified with this monkey. We believe we are the monkey. When the monkey feels fear, we feel fear. When it feels anger, we feel anger. Its frantic monologue is the soundtrack to our existence, and we never think to question it. The most profound discovery in the history of human consciousness, the foundational insight of all contemplative practice, is this: you are not the monkey. You are the jungle in which the monkey swings. You are not the thoughts. You are the awareness that is conscious of the thoughts. This is the great uncoupling, the beginning of true freedom. There is the thought, I am not good enough. And then there is the awareness that a thought, called, I am not good enough, has just appeared in the mind. The difference may seem subtle, but it is everything. It is the difference between being lost in a storm and watching the storm from the safety of a sturdy house. The storm still rages, the wind still howls, but you are no longer at its mercy. You are the witness. There is a simple story that illustrates this shift in perspective. A young, earnest student goes to his Zen master in a state of great distress. Master, he says, I am trying to meditate as you instructed, but I cannot. My thoughts are out of control. They swarm me like angry bees. The more I try to push them away, the more fiercely they attack. I am failing. The master listened, and then, with a calm expression, he said, I have a task for you. I want you to go outside. Take this rope and this sack. Your task is to climb the nearest hill and catch a few of the clouds from the sky. Bring them back to me. The student was confused, but he was obedient. He went outside and saw the great, white, fluffy clouds drifting slowly across the blue expanse. He ran, he jumped, he threw his rope, but it fell uselessly back to the earth. He felt foolish and frustrated. After hours of trying, he returned to the master, empty-handed and dejected. I could not do it, master, he confessed. The clouds are insubstantial. They cannot be caught. They simply move as they will. The master nodded. And why? He asked gently. Do you believe your thoughts are any different? They are like the clouds, drifting through the vast open sky of your mind. They are not a problem to be solved. They are not an enemy to be fought. Your work is not to catch them or to disperse them. Your work is to become the sky and simply allow them to pass. This is the practice. We become the sky. We cultivate the capacity to watch the traffic of our minds without getting into any of the cars. But how do we do this in a practical sense? A powerful and direct technique is to gently label your thoughts. As you sit in quiet observation, you simply make a soft mental note of what the mind is doing. As a wave of anxiety about a future event arises, instead of being swept away by it, you can gently say to yourself, worrying or planning. When a pleasant memory from the past appears, you can note, remembering. If the mind starts criticizing your meditation practice itself, you can label it, judging. The key is the tone. The label is not another judgment. It is not said with frustration, as in, oh no, I'm worrying again. It is said with the gentle, detached curiosity of a scientist observing a natural phenomenon. Ah, here is a thought of worry. How interesting. And good. This simple act of labeling is incredibly powerful for two reasons. First, it reinforces the identity of the observer. The one who is labeling the thought cannot be the thought itself. In that moment of naming, you have stepped out of the river and are now sitting on the bank. You have created a space of conscious awareness. Second, the label robs the thought of its seductive power. A thought like, I will never be able to handle this, can feel like an absolute truth, a prophecy of doom that triggers a cascade of fear. But when you look at it and gently label it, catastrophizing or simply thinking, it is demoted. It transforms from a terrifying reality into what it actually is, a transient electrical event in your brain. It is just another cloud passing by. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to do anything about it. You simply note its presence and let it go. You can develop a rich vocabulary for this practice. Is the mind remembering? Is it planning? Is it fantasizing? Is it judging, doubting, resenting? Each label is a moment of waking up. Over time, you begin to see the patterns of your own mind with stunning clarity. You notice the same few stories, the same recurring worries and obsessions, appearing again and again like characters in a play, and in seeing them so clearly, their hold on you begins to weaken. You realize you are not the chaotic, unpredictable waves on the surface. You are the deep, calm, silent ocean beneath. The waves will always come and go. Storms will arise. But the depths of the ocean remain undisturbed. This abiding peace, this unshakable stillness, is not something you have to create. It is already there. It is your fundamental nature. The practice is not about achieving peace, but about uncovering the peace that is already here by learning to watch the river of the mind without drowning in it. This skill of detached observation is a profound art. It is the ability to sit in the middle of your own inner chaos and remain centered. But like any art, it is made easier with a focal point, an anchor that can hold us steady when the currents become particularly strong. Having learned to watch the river, we now seek the firm ground we can return to, time and time again. We now look for the most simple, reliable, and ever-present anchor in all of human experience, the very rhythm of life itself. We have peered into the cup of the mind and witnessed the ceaseless river of thoughts, the clouds drifting through the inner sky. We have made the pivotal discovery that we are not the thoughts, but the silent, spacious awareness in which they arise. This is a profound relief. Yet, the river is strong. The currents of habit, worry, and distraction are powerful, and it is easy to be swept away, to forget our place on the shore, and find ourselves once again drowning in the stream. To be an effective observer of this inner world, we need more than just intention. We need a tool. We need an anchor. Fortunately, we are all born with the most perfect anchor imaginable. It is not something you must buy or acquire. It is not a secret mantra or a complex philosophy. It has been with you every second of every day of your life, a quiet, rhythmic companion to your every experience. It is your breath. The genius of the breath as a focal point for meditation lies in its unique relationship with time. Our mind, as we have seen, rarely lives in the present. It is a time traveler. It dwells in the past, replaying old conversations, savoring triumphs, or cringing at regrets. Or it rockets into the future, rehearsing for challenges spinning out catastrophic fantasies, or daydreaming of a better tomorrow. The past is a ghost. The future is a dream. The only reality, the only place where life is actually lived, is in the razor-thin, ever-moving moment called now. But the mind finds it very difficult to stay here. The breath, however, knows no other home. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot exhale in the future. Each inhalation is a new beginning. Each exhalation is a complete letting go. The breath is tethered, absolutely and irrevocably, to the present moment. Therefore, when you place your attention on the simple, physical sensation of your breathing, you are pulling your awareness out of the phantom worlds of past and future and anchoring it firmly in the living reality of the present. It is the bridge between the scattered world of thought and the grounded world of the body. Imagine a small boat on a vast open sea. This boat is your awareness. One day, a tremendous storm rolls in. The sky turns black, the winds begin to howl, and the waves rise into mountains of churning water. The storm is the chaos of life, a difficult diagnosis, a job loss, a painful conflict, or simply the overwhelming accumulation of daily stresses. The boatman, in his small vessel, is terrified. He is tossed about violently. He knows he cannot fight the storm. To sail against such waves would be madness. To try and calm the seas would be an act of impossible arrogance. His wisdom lies not in controlling the external conditions, but in securing his own position within them. He does not waste his energy cursing the sky. Instead, he goes to the one thing he can rely on. He lets down his anchor. The heavy iron form drops through the turbulent water, sinking past the chaos of the surface, and digs deep into the calm, quiet, solid ground of the seabed. Now, the boat is still on a stormy sea. The wind still shrieks, the waves still crash against its hull. But it is no longer lost. It is no longer being carried away into the dangerous unknown expanse. It holds its center. It is secure. The breath is this anchor. The storm is the monkey mind. The turbulent sea is the chaos of your thoughts and emotions. The practice of mindfulness of breathing is the simple, repeated act of letting down your anchor. The goal is not to stop the storm. The storms of life will always come. The goal is to find the unshakable stability that is always available to you, right underneath the surface. The practice itself is called anapanasati in the ancient Pali language, and its beauty is in its simplicity. You begin by finding a comfortable position. You don't need to sit cross-legged on the floor unless you want to. You can sit in a chair with your feet flat on the ground and your spine upright but not rigid. You can allow your eyes to gently close, or you can rest your gaze softly on a spot a few feet in front of you. Then, you simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of breathing. You might choose to focus on the feeling of the air entering and leaving your nostrils, noticing the subtle coolness of the in-breath and the slight warmth of the out-breath. Or you might rest your attention on your abdomen, feeling its gentle rise with the inhalation and its soft fall with the exhalation. The most important instruction is this: you do not need to change your breath in any way. You are not trying to breathe deeply or slowly or in any special rhythm. The task is simply to observe the breath as it is. Let the body breathe itself. Your job is to be the curious, gentle witness. Now, something will happen. It is guaranteed to happen. After a few seconds, or perhaps a minute if you are lucky, your mind will wander, an itch will appear, a sound will distract you, a thought will hook you, and you will be gone, lost in a daydream or a worry. This is not a failure. It is not a mistake. It is simply what minds do. The most crucial moment in the entire practice is the moment you realize you have been distracted. That moment of realization is a moment of mindfulness. You have woken up. And what do you do when you wake up? You don't scold yourself. You don't get frustrated. The practice is to treat the wandering mind with the same kindness and patience you would use to train a new puppy. You wouldn't yell at the puppy for wandering off. You would just gently take it by the scruff of the neck and lead it back to where you want it to be. So, you gently, and without any judgment, guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath, back to the sensation of the rising and falling abdomen, and you begin again. This process of wandering, realizing, and gently returning is the practice. Every return is a repetition, a strengthening of the muscle of attention. This practice has effects that are not just psychological, but deeply physiological. When our mind is lost in anxious thoughts, our breath naturally becomes shallow and rapid. This signals our nervous system to enter its fight or flight mode, flooding our body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense. We are physically preparing for a threat, even if the threat is only a thought. When we consciously rest our attention on our breath, allowing it to be natural, it sends a powerful counter-signal. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest mode. It tells our brain, on a primal level, that we are safe. The heart rate slows, the muscles relax. We are using the simple physical reality of the breath to soothe the very biological roots of our anxiety. It is a direct intervention in the feedback loop of stress. We are using the anchor not only to steady the mind, but to calm the body. The breath, then, becomes our most trusted friend. It is our refuge. In any moment of overwhelm, in any meeting, in any traffic jam, in the middle of any difficult conversation, you can secretly return to your anchor. No one needs to know you are doing it. Just a single conscious breath, feeling the air come in and go out, can be enough to break the spell of anxiety and bring you back to the sanity of the present moment. It is always with you, this quiet, life-giving rhythm. It is the anchor that allows us to ride out the storms. And by holding ourselves steady in the present, by truly learning to inhabit this moment through the anchor of the breath, we begin to notice something profound about its nature. We see, with undeniable clarity, that the present moment, this reality we have anchored ourselves to, is never static. It is a constantly flowing, ever-changing river. This direct experience of change, seen not as a concept, but as a lived reality, leads us to the next great exploration on our journey. Anchored by the breath, we have found our way back to the present moment. We have learned to sit on the bank of the mind's river, watching the flow of thoughts without being swept away. But as we sit here, in this newfound stillness, we begin to notice something fundamental about the present moment itself. It does not stand still. The instant we grasp it, it is already gone, replaced by a new now. The in-breath becomes the out-breath. The silence is replaced by a sound, which then fades into silence again. By anchoring ourselves in the present, we have discovered that the present is not a fixed point, but a constantly flowing dynamic edge. We have come face to face with one of the most profound and central truths of existence, a law as fundamental as gravity. In the Buddhist tradition, this is known as anicca, or impermanence. Impermanence is not a complex doctrine to be believed, but a simple reality to be observed. It states that everything, without a single exception, is in a state of constant flux. Nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent. Look at your own body. The person you see in the mirror today is not the same person who was there a year ago, or even yesterday. On a cellular level, you are in a continuous process of regeneration and decay. The cells that make up your skin, your bones, and your organs are constantly dying and being replaced. You are not a static entity. You are a process, a flowing pattern of change. Your emotions are a perfect illustration of anicca. Think of the most intense joy you have ever felt. Where is it now? It came, it filled your being, and then it subsided. Think of the deepest sorrow. It too arose, it stayed for a time, and then its intensity faded. Our feelings are like the weather, passing clouds in the vast sky of our awareness. They are not us, and they do not last. This law applies to everything we perceive. The new car we cherish will one day become old, rusted, and discarded. The favorite piece of clothing will fray and fade. The house we live in is slowly, imperceptibly, weathering and changing. Our relationships, too, are living, breathing things, subject to the same law. People grow, they change, their priorities shift. Friendships evolve, partnerships deepen or dissolve. Even the seemingly solid earth beneath our feet is in motion. Mountains are slowly eroding, coastlines are being reshaped by the sea, and in the grand cosmic scale, stars are being born and are dying in every moment. From the fleeting life of a thought to the billion-year life of a galaxy, everything is a temporary arrangement. Everything is on its way to becoming something else. At first, this truth can feel unsettling, even frightening. Our deepest instinct is to seek security, stability, and permanence. We build our lives on the assumption that some things will last. We want our happiness to be permanent, our loved ones to be with us forever, our health and youth to never fade. The teaching of Anika seems to pull the rug out from under these hopes. But the wisdom of Zen is not about presenting a bleak or pessimistic view of the world. It is about presenting a realistic one, because impermanence itself is not the cause of our suffering. Impermanence is simply the way things are. Our suffering, what is called dukkha, arises from one thing and one thing only: our resistance to this truth. It is our desperate, futile attempt to cling to things that are, by their very nature, unclutchable. Our suffering is the friction generated when our desire for permanence grinds against the reality of impermanence. We try to freeze frame a moment of happiness, to build a dam to stop the river of time. This creates a constant, low-level anxiety, because deep down, we know we cannot succeed. We live in fear of losing what we have. When faced with pain, loss, or sadness, we do the opposite. We try to push it away, to deny its existence, to pretend it isn't happening, because we fear it will last forever. This aversion, this struggle against what is, only adds a second layer of suffering on top of the original pain. It is like trying to hold a piece of burning coal. The coal itself is painful, but the suffering is magnified by the act of clenching our fist around it. The wisdom of Anika teaches us how to open the hand. There is a timeless Taoist story that perfectly captures this wisdom in practice. It is the story of a farmer in a small village. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A week later, the horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "Oh, what wonderful luck," they exclaimed. The farmer again replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. "Oh, what dreadful luck," they lamented. The farmer just looked at them and said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks after that, the emperor's army came to the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war they were fighting. Because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was the only young man in the village who was spared. The farmer's wisdom was not that he could see the future. His wisdom was his profound, lived understanding of impermanence. He knew that the nature of life is to change, and that it is impossible to know the ultimate outcome of any single event. He did not get carried away by the temporary labels of good or bad. He did not cling to his good fortune or despair at his bad fortune. He remained in a state of open acceptance, allowing the river of life to flow as it would, without resisting it. This is how we can learn to dance with change, rather than fight against it. This understanding is not a passive resignation. It is a practical guide to living more wisely and joyfully. When you are experiencing a moment of happiness, of beauty, of connection, the knowledge of Anika does not have to diminish it. On the contrary, it can make it infinitely more precious. Because you know this moment will not last, you are inspired to be fully present for it. You savor it completely, with your whole being, gratefully, without the anxious need to make it permanent. You drink the tea of the present moment without worrying about whether you can have the same cup tomorrow. When you are experiencing pain or difficulty, the wisdom of Anika becomes a source of great solace and strength. You can remind your struggling self, "This, too, shall pass." This is not a denial of your pain. It is a recognition of its nature. It prevents a temporary state of sadness from becoming a permanent identity of "I am a sad person." It is simply a patch of stormy weather passing through. This knowledge gives you the resilience to endure, knowing that the sun is still behind the clouds. The practice, then, is to gently and consistently remind ourselves of this law. Look at the flower on your table and know that it is in the process of wilting. Look at your own reflection and see the process of change at work. Experience a strong emotion and watch it arise, peak, and fade like a wave. By doing this, we loosen the grip of attachment. We learn to hold life with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. We stop fighting with reality and begin to move in harmony with it. This deep, honest contemplation of change, however, leads us to an even more profound and unsettling question. If everything is constantly changing, if our body is a process, our thoughts are a fleeting stream, and our emotions are like the weather, then what is the I that we think is experiencing all of this? What is this solid, continuous self that we work so hard to defend and promote? If everything is a flowing river, who or what are we? We have followed the river of impermanence, anicca, to its very edge. We have seen that everything we can perceive, from our own bodies to the distant stars, is in a state of constant, unrelenting change. This powerful insight, once digested, forces a question upon us that is both deeply personal and profoundly unsettling. If my body is changing, my thoughts are a fleeting stream, and my emotions are as transient as the weather, then who am I? What is this constant, solid me that I feel resides somewhere behind my eyes, the pilot in the machine, the thinker of the thoughts, the feeler of the feelings? All of our lives, we operate on the unshakable assumption that this I exists. It is the very center of our universe. We strive to protect it, to enhance it, and to satisfy its desires. And yet, the deeper we look, the more elusive it becomes. This investigation brings us to the most radical, challenging, and ultimately liberating teaching in all of Buddhism. It is the teaching of anatta, which is often translated as no self. This is not a teaching that we do not exist. You are clearly here, listening, thinking, and feeling. Anatta is not an annihilation. It is a clarification. It suggests that our deeply held belief in a fixed, separate, independent self is an illusion, a trick of the mind. Let us go on a search for this self. Where could it possibly be? Is it in your body? You say my body, which implies there is a possessor and a possession. If you were to lose a limb in an accident, would you be any less you? Of course not. The body is a part of our experience, a vehicle we inhabit, but it is not the core identity we are searching for. It is a biological process, constantly changing, not a permanent self. Perhaps the self is the mind then? Is it your thoughts? But which ones? Are you the angry thought you had this morning? Or the compassionate one you had yesterday? Are you the brilliant idea or the foolish worry? Thoughts are like the clouds we observed earlier, a chaotic parade passing through awareness. To identify with any single thought, or even the entire stream, would be like a weatherman identifying as a hurricane. It makes no sense. You are the one who is aware of the thoughts, but you cannot be the thoughts themselves. Is the self, then, your feelings? This is even more precarious. Feelings are notoriously fickle, rising and falling with the circumstances of the day. If you identify as happy, what happens when sadness inevitably visits? Have you ceased to be yourself? No, you are the one who experiences happiness, the one who experiences sadness, but you are not the emotions themselves. The Buddha analyzed this process with scientific precision. He described a person as a combination of 5 changing processes known as the 5 aggregates. There is form, which is the physical body. There are feelings, both pleasant and unpleasant. There is perception, which is the faculty that recognizes and labels things. There are mental formations, which include our thoughts, habits, opinions, and prejudices. And finally, there is consciousness, the awareness that knows the other 4. We assume there is a 6th thing, a me, a CEO in the boardroom of the mind who is in charge of all these aggregates. But the radical insight of anatta is that there is no 6th thing. There is no boss in the office. The self we experience is simply the momentary, dynamic interplay of these 5 changing processes. It is a verb, not a noun. It is a happening, not a thing. The house is empty of a permanent resident. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh explains this concept of interbeing with the beautiful image of a single sheet of paper. He asks us to look deeply into the paper. If we do, we can see a cloud floating in the sky. Why? Because without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow, and without trees, we cannot make paper, so the cloud is in the paper. If we look further, we can see the sunshine that was essential for the tree to grow through photosynthesis. The sunshine is in the paper. We can see the logger who cut the tree down, and we can see his parents who gave birth to him. We can see the wheat that became the bread he ate for breakfast that gave him the energy to work. All of that is also in the sheet of paper. If we were to return the cloud to the sky, the sunshine to the sun, the logger to his parents, the paper could not exist. The paper, therefore, is empty of a separate, independent self. It is entirely full of everything else in the cosmos. We are exactly like that sheet of paper. You are empty of a separate self. Look deeply into yourself. You can see your parents and your ancestors, their DNA and their habits living on in you. You can see all the teachers who have shared their ideas with you. You can see the farmers who grew the food that has built your body. You can see the air you are breathing, the clouds, the sun, the earth. All of these so-called non-you elements are, in fact, essential components of you. You are with everything else in the universe. The sense of being a separate, isolated individual is a persistent and powerful illusion. At first, this idea of no self can feel terrifying. It can feel like a loss, a void. But if we sit with it, we come to see that it is the ultimate liberation. The separate self, the ego, is the source of almost all our fear and anxiety. It is a small, fragile, insecure identity that we spend our entire lives trying to defend and promote. We fear criticism because it is an attack on this self. We crave praise because it inflates this self. We are jealous of others because their success seems to diminish this self. We fear failure because it proves this self is inadequate. And most of all, we fear death because we believe it will be the final annihilation of this self. It is an exhausting, lifelong, and ultimately losing battle to protect this imaginary construct. The realization of anatta is the end of this war. If there is no fixed, separate self to defend, what is there to fear? Who is there to be insulted? An insult is just words, floating in the air. Without a solid ego to land on, they have no power to harm. The poison of comparison dissolves. Why would one wave in the ocean be jealous of another wave that is slightly taller? They are both temporary expressions of the same ocean. The fear of death itself begins to transform. The end of a life is no longer seen as the extinction of a precious separate entity, but as a wave gracefully returning to the ocean from which it came. The pattern dissolves, but the water remains. This is not emptiness in the sense of a nihilistic void. It is emptiness in the sense of boundless potential, an open space free from the heavy, suffocating burden of the ego. From this understanding, compassion arises not as a moral duty, but as a natural, logical consequence. If the boundary between me and you is ultimately arbitrary, then your suffering is my suffering, your joy is my joy. To harm you is, in a very real sense, to harm myself. It is like the left hand deciding to strike the right hand. It is illogical. Kindness ceases to be something we should do to be a good person, and becomes the most sensible and obvious way to navigate the world. We are all interconnected expressions of a single, unified process. So, anatta does not erase us. It expands us. It frees us from the cramped prison of the ego and allows us to see that we are not the small, isolated character we thought we were. We are the entire, unfolding, magnificent play. We are not a noun, we are a verb. We are not a thing, we are a happening. We are a dance of interdependent forces, a temporary and beautiful pattern in the fabric of the cosmos. Having laid these three great foundations, stones the open curiosity of beginner's mind, the flowing reality of impermanence, and the liberating truth of no self, we are now fully prepared. We have the tools and the perspective needed to turn and face the very reason we began this journey, the universal human experience of dissatisfaction, stress, and pain. We are ready to look directly at the problem of suffering, or dukkha. We have journeyed through the foundational landscapes of the inner world. We have learned to empty our cup with a beginner's mind, to witness the ceaseless river of impermanence, and to see through the illusion of a solid, separate self. These are not merely intellectual exercises. They are preparations, the sharpening of surgical tools, allowing us to perform the most courageous and compassionate act of all, to look directly at the nature of our own experience without flinching. When we do this, with radical honesty, we must acknowledge a fundamental quality of life, a truth that threads its way through every human story. This truth is the starting point of the Buddha's teachings, his first great public announcement after his enlightenment. It is the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, or dukkha. To our modern ears, the word suffering sounds heavy, pessimistic, and bleak. It conjures images of tragedy and despair. But to understand this first noble truth as a gloomy declaration that life is suffering is to profoundly miss its purpose. It is not a metaphysical judgment on the value of life. It is a medical diagnosis. Imagine going to a wise and compassionate doctor because you have felt unwell for years, a persistent feeling of unease that you cannot quite name. A bad doctor might dismiss your concerns or offer you a temporary painkiller to mask the symptoms. But a great doctor would perform a thorough examination, look you in the eye with kindness, and say, "I have a diagnosis. I understand the nature of your illness." This news, while sobering, is actually a moment of profound hope. The unnamed, mysterious ailment has been identified, and if an illness can be diagnosed, it can be treated. The first noble truth is the Buddha, acting as the great physician, offering humanity this clear, courageous, and ultimately hopeful diagnosis. The Pali word dukkha is much richer and more nuanced than the English word suffering. It encompasses a vast spectrum of human experience, which can be understood in three distinct forms. The first is dukkha, which means the pain of pain. This is the most obvious and easily recognizable form of suffering. It is the physical pain of a headache, of a chronic illness, of an injury. It is the sharp emotional pain of losing a loved one, the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being rejected. It is the raw grief, the hot anger, the cold anxiety that are undeniable parts of the human condition. It is the suffering of birth, of growing old, of sickness, and of death. No one is exempt from this form of dukkha. It is the straightforward, unavoidable pain of life. The second form is more subtle. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the suffering that arises directly from the law of impermanence, anicca. It is the pain that comes from the fact that our happiness is transient. Think of the last day of a wonderful vacation, that subtle sadness that creeps in, knowing that this pleasant experience is coming to an end. Think of the joy of a perfect summer's day, tinged with the knowledge that autumn will soon follow. This is viparinama dukkha. It is the anxiety that shadows our most cherished relationships, the quiet fear that we could lose the people we love. It is the stress of trying to hold on to youth, health, and success, knowing that all of these things are subject to change. Even in our moments of greatest pleasure, this form of suffering can be present as the fear of that pleasure's inevitable end. It is the suffering baked into our clinging to things that, by their very nature, cannot be held. The third and most profound form is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the most difficult to grasp, but the most pervasive. It is a fundamental, background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is inherent in being a complex, conditioned being. It is that feeling of, "Is this all there is?" that can arise even when everything in our life is seemingly perfect. It is the friction of being a self that is dependent on countless causes and conditions outside of our control. It is the inherent vulnerability of being a temporary assembly of body and mind. This is the dukkha that explains why billionaires can be miserable, why rock stars can feel empty, and why people who seem to have it all can still feel a deep sense of unease. It is like a shoe that is just a little too tight, or a song playing perpetually just slightly out of tune. It is not acute agony, but a pervasive, underlying friction that prevents us from ever feeling completely and permanently at ease. This is the baseline condition that we are constantly trying to distract ourselves from, with entertainment, with acquisitions, with endless activity. There is a powerful story that illustrates the journey to understanding this first noble truth. It is the story of a young woman named Kisa Gautami. Her first and only child had died, and she was consumed by a grief so powerful it drove her to madness. She refused to accept his death, and she wandered through her village, clutching the small, lifeless body, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people ignored her, others mocked her, and many pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone suggested she go and see the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for the miracle medicine. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion. He did not dismiss her, nor did he offer a false platitude. He said, "I can help you, but first, you must do something for me. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed. However, the seed must come from a house where no one and no child, no husband or wife, no parent or servanthus ever died." Kisa Gautami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed. That was an easy task. She immediately began going from door to door. At the first house, she asked, "Do you have a mustard seed for the Buddha?" "Of course," the woman replied. "We have plenty." As the woman went to get it, Kisa Gotami asked, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my friend," she said, "do not remind me of my deepest sorrow. My beloved husband died just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same at every door. Everyone had mustard seeds, but every family had been touched by death. Here we lost a parent, here we lost a child. The living are few, they told her, but the dead are many. As dusk fell, she had visited every house in the village and had not found her single mustard seed. She sat by the roadside, watching the flickering lights of the village, and a profound realization dawned on her. Her suffering, which she thought was uniquely and unbearably hers, was in fact the shared, universal condition of all humanity. In that moment of seeing the truth, her obsessive clinging to her personal grief began to dissolve. She understood. The Buddha's prescription was not a mustard seed, it was the medicine of truth. By having her confront the universality of loss and suffering directly, he allowed her to heal herself. The first noble truth is this medicine: to look squarely at the reality of dukkha in our lives, without denial or distraction, is not an act of pessimism, it is the ultimate act of self-compassion. It is to finally stop running from the truth and to stand on the solid ground of reality. Only from here can any real healing begin. The diagnosis has been made. We have had the courage to look at the illness. Now, with hope in our hearts, we can proceed to the next logical, essential question: what is the cause of this condition? This brings us to the threshold of the second noble truth. Having stood on the firm ground of the first noble truth, we have had the courage to look at the illness. We have acknowledged the universal reality of dukkha, the spectrum of suffering and unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the fabric of our lives. This honest diagnosis, far from being a cause for despair, is the necessary first step toward healing. It allows us to ask the most vital question a physician can ask: what is the cause? Why do we suffer? This brings us to the heart of the Buddha's analysis of the human condition, the second noble truth. It is the truth of the origin of suffering, known in Pali as samudaya. The Buddha declared that the root cause of all our suffering, from the most profound grief to the most subtle dissatisfaction, is a single, powerful force: tanha, a word that translates as thirst, craving, or clinging. This is not a simple desire. A healthy desire to eat when you are hungry or to seek shelter when you are cold is not tanha. Tanha is a deeper, more compulsive, and thirstier kind of wanting. It is the obsessive craving that arises from a fundamental feeling of lack, the inner voice that whispers, "If only I had this, then I would be happy. If only I could get rid of that, then I would be at peace." It is the engine of the monkey mind, the driving force that keeps us restlessly seeking for something outside of ourselves to fix what feels wrong on the inside. This thirst manifests in three primary ways. The first and most obvious is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for anything that gratifies our five senses. It is the craving for delicious food, for beautiful sights, for intoxicating music, for physical pleasure, for luxurious comfort. In our modern world, this form of tanha is amplified 1,000 times over. It is the compulsive urge to check our phones for a new notification, the desire for the next episode of a series, the relentless pursuit of new tastes, new experiences, new possessions. The objects of our desire, the food, the phone, the show, are not inherently the problem. The problem lies in the obsessive, clinging quality of the craving itself, the mistaken belief that satisfying this thirst will lead to lasting happiness. The second form of this thirst is more subtle and deeply tied to our sense of self. It is bhava tanha, the craving for being or existence. This is the deep, desperate thirst to become somebody, to build and solidify a permanent and successful identity. It is the craving for fame, power, status, and recognition. It is the desire to be seen, to be validated, to leave a mark on the world. It is the voice of the ego that says, "I must succeed. I must be loved. I must be important." This craving fuels our ambition and our relentless striving, but it is rooted in the illusion of a separate self we explored in the teaching of anatta. We are trying to build a solid stone fortress on top of a flowing river, a project doomed to create constant anxiety and insecurity. The third form is the mirror image of the second. It is vibhava tanha, the craving for non-being or non-existence. This is the powerful urge to annihilate something unpleasant. It is the craving for a painful emotion, like anxiety or shame, to simply go away. It is the desire to escape from a difficult situation or a painful truth. In its milder forms, it manifests as avoidance, procrastination, and denial. We numb ourselves with alcohol or drugs or endless distractions, all in an effort to not feel what we are feeling. In its most extreme form, this craving for non-existence can manifest as self-harm or the desire for suicide, the ultimate attempt to escape from a self that feels unbearable. These three forms of thirst, the craving for pleasure, the craving to become, and the craving to get rid of, further tangled roots from which the tree of suffering grows. There is a simple, stark parable that illustrates how this mechanism works. Imagine a man, shipwrecked and adrift on a life raft in the middle of a vast ocean. He is dying of thirst. The sun beats down on him, and his throat is parched and cracked. He is surrounded by water, endless water, but he knows it is salt water, poisonous to drink. For days he resists. But finally, his agonizing thirst overwhelms his wisdom. He reaches over the side, scoops up the clear, cool water in his hands, and drinks it down. For a single, fleeting moment, there is relief. The coolness is a balm to his burning throat. But this relief is a treacherous illusion. Very quickly, the high concentration of salt begins to flood his system, drawing what little fresh water is left out of his cells. His initial thirst, which was merely agonizing, now becomes a raging, unbearable fire. In his madness, he drinks more, seeking that momentary coolness, and with every mouthful, he accelerates his own death. The very thing he turns to for salvation is the source of his destruction. We are this man on the raft. The initial thirst is the baseline unsatisfactoriness of our existence, the feeling of dukkha. The salt water is the endless ocean of sense pleasures, validation, and distractions that the world offers us. The act of drinking is our acting on tanha, our clinging to these things in the hope that they will quench our inner thirst. The momentary relief is the short-lived pleasure or distraction we experience, and the raging, intensified thirst that follows is the inevitable return of our dissatisfaction, now often stronger and more desperate than before. This is the vicious cycle that traps us. We feel a flicker of boredom or loneliness, so we grab our phone. We get a momentary hit of dopamine from a social media like, but then we see someone else's seemingly perfect life, and our feeling of inadequacy returns, now magnified. We feel stress from work, so we eat a sugary snack. We get a brief sugar high, but then comes the crash, the guilt, and the original stress is still there. This is the hedonic treadmill. We are running faster and faster, consuming more and more, yet we remain stuck in the same place of fundamental dissatisfaction. Now, this may still sound like a grim picture, but contained within this second noble truth is the most radically hopeful message in the entire teaching. It is the declaration that our suffering is not random, nor is it a punishment. It is not our inescapable fate. Our suffering has a cause, and anything that has a specific, identifiable cause can also have an end if that cause is removed. This is the logic of all healing. If your house is cold, and you discover the cause is an open window, you don't despair, you rejoice. The problem is solvable. You simply close the window. If a doctor tells you your illness is caused by a specific bacterial infection, you don't give up. You are filled with hope, because now a specific antibiotic can be prescribed. The second noble truth tells us that the problem is not with the world. The problem is not that life is inherently tragic. The problem is the thirst within our own minds. This places the power to change our lives not in the hands of fate or gods or other people, but directly in our own. We are not helpless victims of circumstance. The source of our suffering is internal, which means the path to our liberation must also be internal. We have now taken the two most critical steps on this diagnostic journey. We have looked at the illness, dukkha, and we have identified its root cause, tanha. A complete diagnosis has been made. This immediately and logically leads us to the next stage of the medical process. It leads us to the prognosis and the treatment plan. It begs the most thrilling question of all. Is a cure possible? Is there a state beyond this thirst, beyond this suffering? And if so, what is the prescription? What is the path we must walk to achieve it? This brings us to the promise of the third and fourth noble truths, the truth of the end of suffering and the path that leads to that end. We have walked a path of deep diagnosis. With courage, we have looked at the illness of our shared human condition, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness called dukkha. With clarity, we have identified its root cause, the relentless, compulsive thirst of craving and clinging, known as tanha. We now stand at the most critical juncture in any medical consultation. The patient, having understood the illness and its cause, looks to the physician with a single trembling question. Is there hope? Can this be cured? It is here, at this very point, that the Buddha delivers the most optimistic and life-affirming message imaginable. His answer is a definitive yes. This is the third noble truth, the truth of nirvana, the cessation of suffering. This truth declares that there is a state of being that is completely free from the fever of craving and the pain of suffering. This state is called nirvana, or nibbana, in the ancient Pali tongue. This word has been profoundly misunderstood in the West. It is not a heaven, not a paradise in the clouds that one goes to after death. It is not an eternal life of sensual pleasure. Such a place would still be subject to impermanence, and would itself be a form of dukkha. The literal meaning of nibbana is to extinguish or to blow out. Imagine a candle flame. The flame is the fire of our suffering, fueled by greed, hatred, and ignorance. Nirvana is the state that is realized when these fires have been completely extinguished. It is not the annihilation of the self, for we have already seen that a solid, separate self is an illusion. It is the annihilation of the illusion of the self, and with it, the extinction of the craving, aversion, and confusion that this illusion generates. Nirvana is a state of supreme and unshakable peace, a profound and joyful freedom that can be experienced right here in this very life. It is not a trance-like state of nothingness. It is, rather, a state of perfect clarity and boundless compassion. It is the peace of the deep, silent ocean that remains completely undisturbed, no matter how violently the storms may rage on the surface. The one who has realized nirvana still feels sensory experience, but they do not cling to the pleasant or react with aversion to the unpleasant. They are free from the frantic, desperate search for something more, something else, something better. They have awakened from the dream of dissatisfaction. The thirst has been quenched, not with salt water, but by realizing there was no fundamental lack in the first place. This is the promise at the heart of the Buddha's teaching. A complete and final end to suffering is possible for any human being who is willing to walk the path. This naturally leads to the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths. If there is an end to suffering, how do we get there? What is the prescription? What is the treatment plan? This is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, or Magga. The Buddha was not a philosopher who was content to merely describe the human condition. He was a practical guide. He laid out a complete, step-by-step training program for the mind and heart. This program is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. Before we explore this path, there is a famous story that perfectly illustrates the Buddha's pragmatic approach. A man was shot by an arrow dipped in poison. His family and friends rushed to his side and wanted to immediately call for a surgeon to remove it, but the wounded man stopped them. "Wait," he insisted. "Before you pull out this arrow, I must know the answers to some questions. Who was the man who shot me? To what clan did he belong? Was he tall or short? Was his skin dark or fair? What village did he come from? What kind of bow did he use? What was the bowstring made of? What kind of wood was the shaft of the arrow made from? What type of feathers were used for its fletching? What was the precise formula of the poison?" The Buddha's commentary on this story was simple and direct. That man would die from the poison long before he ever received the answers to his spéculative question. We are that man. The poisoned arrow is dukkha, lodged in our side. Many of us spend our lives distracted by metaphysical questions. Who created the universe? Is there a soul? What happens after we die? The Buddha considered these questions to be unhelpful in the urgent task of ending our suffering. The immediate, life or death priority is to pull out the arrow. The Noble Eightfold Path is the surgeon's kit. It is the clear, practical, and effective method for removing the arrow of suffering and healing the wound for good. The path is called eightfold because it is composed of 8 interconnected elements. It is often symbolized by a wheel with 8 spokes, indicating that each part supports and is supported by all the others. They are not sequential steps, but rather facets of a single, integrated way of life that are to be cultivated simultaneously. For the sake of clarity, these 8 factors can be grouped into 3 essential trainings. The first is the training in wisdom. This is the foundation, the development of a clear and accurate view of reality. It consists of 2 parts. Right view, sometimes called right understanding, is the clear seeing of reality as it is. It is the experiential understanding of the 4 noble truths themselves, the truths of suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path. It is seeing anicca, dukkha, and anatta not as theories, but as the fabric of our own lives. Right intention, or right thought, follows from this. It is the conscious cultivation of wholesome intentions. It means nurturing the intention of letting go, of renouncing our clinging. It means cultivating the intention of goodwill and friendliness towards all beings. And it means holding the intention of harmlessness, of deep compassion. Right view is having the correct map. Right intention is setting the correct destination. The second training is in ethical conduct. This is the application of wisdom to our daily lives, how we manifest our inner understanding through our actions in the world. It includes right speech, which means abstaining from lying, from divisive talk that turns people against each other, from harsh words that cause pain, and from idle chatter that pollutes the mind with noise. It is speaking only what is true, kind, and beneficial. It also includes right action, which means acting in ways that are compassionate and harmless. At its most basic, this means refraining from killing, stealing, and causing sexual harm. And it includes right livelihood, which is the practice of earning a living in a profession that does not bring harm to oneself or to others. The third and final training is in mental discipline. This is the direct training of the mind itself, the practical work of meditation. It includes right effort, which is the sustained and gentle energy required to let go of unwholesome states of mind, like anger and jealousy, and to cultivate wholesome ones, like kindness and patience. It includes right mindfulness, which is the heart of the practice. This is the moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness of our body, our feelings, our mind, and the world around us. And finally, it includes right concentration, which is the ability to unify the mind and focus it on a single point, leading to states of deep calm, stability, and profound insight. This is the path. It is a complete prescription for the human condition. It is not a path of blind faith, but one of cultivation, practice, and direct experience. The Buddha did not ask for followers, but for explorers willing to test his words against the reality of their own lives. We have now seen the full scope of his teaching: a diagnosis, a cause, a prognosis of a complete cure, and a detailed treatment plan. The map has been laid out before us. All that is left is to begin the journey, to take the first steps onto the path itself. We will begin by exploring how to apply this wisdom in our interactions with the world, starting with the simplest and most challenging of situations, when our boat is bumped by another. We have now seen the great map of the eightfold path laid out before us, a comprehensive guide to ending suffering. It is a path of wisdom, of ethical conduct, and of mental discipline. But a map, no matter how detailed, is useless until we take the first step. We begin our walk on this path by addressing one of the most powerful and destructive forces in our emotional lives, a fire that consumes our peace and prevents us from acting with clarity and kindness. We begin with the problem of anger. Anger is a potent poison. When we feel wronged, insulted, or attacked, a hot, righteous energy surges through us. In these moments, concepts like right speech and right action can seem a world away. How then can we apply wisdom when we are caught in the grip of our own indignation? The answer lies not in suppressing our anger, but in understanding its true nature. For this, we turn to a simple and profound story, not from the Buddhist texts, but from the kindred spirit of Taoism, from the ancient sage Zhuangzi. Imagine a man leisurely rowing his small boat across a calm, misty lake at dawn. The world is quiet, the water is still, and a sense of deep peace pervades the scene. He is alone with his thoughts, enjoying the solitude. Suddenly, with a jarring thud, Another boat collides with his. His peace is shattered. His heart pounds. A surge of irritation flashes through him. He peers through the thick morning mist and sees the dark shape of the other boat. He opens his mouth to shout, his mind already crafting the furious words he will use to berate the careless fool who has so rudely disturbed his tranquility. How could someone be so clumsy, so inept? He feels the righteous fury building in his chest, ready to be unleashed upon the offender. But as he gets closer, and the mist begins to clear, he sees that there is no one in the other boat. It is empty. It simply broke loose from its moorings upstream and drifted down the current, guided only by the wind and the water. In that instant, all of his anger vanishes. There is no one to shout at. There is no one to blame. There is only the simple, impersonal reality of the situation. A boat has bumped into his boat. The problem is no longer a personal affront. It is a simple, practical matter to be dealt with. His fire has no fuel. This story is a deep and practical teaching on the very mechanism of anger. The man's anger was not an inevitable consequence of the collision. The collision itself was a neutral event. The anger was entirely dependent on one single assumption, that there was a conscious, thinking person in the other boat who was at fault. The anger was aimed at a target. It was a story the man told himself in an instant. Someone has wronged me. When that story was proven false, the anger, which was a product of the story, could not survive. It evaporated on the spot, leaving behind only the simple facts of the situation. This is a revolutionary insight. Most of us believe that external events make us angry. The driver who cuts us off makes us angry. The colleague who criticizes our work makes us angry. The partner who says an unkind word makes us angry. But the story of the empty boat suggests this is not true. The external event is merely a trigger, a bump. The anger itself is generated by the story we immediately tell ourselves about the event. A story that is almost always centered on someone who has intentionally or negligently harmed us. Our anger is a fire that requires the fuel of blame. Now, let us engage in a radical shift of perspective. What if we chose to view every boat as an empty boat? What if we decided that most of the people who bump into us in life are not consciously steering their vessel with malice toward us? What if, instead, they are simply adrift, pushed along by the powerful, unseen currents of their own suffering, their own confusion, their own deep-seated habits? Consider the person who cuts you off in traffic. Your instant story is, that person is arrogant, disrespectful, and they did that to me. This story creates anger. But what if their boat is empty? What if they are a young doctor, exhausted after a 24-hour shift, their mind foggy with fatigue? What if they just received terrible news and are rushing to a loved one's side, their mind blinded by panic? What if they are simply lost in their own frantic monkey mind, replaying an argument or worrying about a bill, and they didn't even truly see you? Their boat is not being steered by a conscious intention to harm you. It is being driven by the currents of their own life, their own dukkha. Think of a colleague at work who makes a critical or undermining comment. The immediate story is, they are trying to make me look bad. They are my rival. This creates feelings of resentment and defensiveness. But what if their boat is empty? What if they live with a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy, a desperate need to prove their own worth by finding fault in others? What if their critical nature is a product of their own fear and insecurity? Their words are not truly about you. They are a reflection of the ghosts and fears that populate their own mind. Their boat is being steered by the invisible hand of their own past pain. This perspective is not about making excuses for harmful behavior. It is not about becoming a passive doormat and allowing others to treat us poorly. Setting clear boundaries and communicating our needs is still a vital part of right action and right speech. This is an internal practice. It is a strategy for protecting our own heart, for choosing to not drink the poison of anger and resentment, regardless of what is happening externally. The actions of others are their karma. Our reaction is our karma. The empty boat practice is about taking responsibility for our own reaction. It is about realizing that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. When you can truly see the world this way, something remarkable begins to happen. The hot, destructive fire of anger begins to cool and transform into the warm, healing waters of compassion. When you see a boat drifting aimlessly on the current, bumping into the riverbanks, you don't feel rage at the boat. You might feel a kind of sadness for its predicament. You might simply see the reality of the situation for what it is. When you can see that the person who has hurt you is acting from a place of their own deep suffering, their own confusion, their own emptiness, your anger can soften. You begin to see that they, too, are trapped on a stormy sea. They, too, are being tossed about by forces they do not understand and cannot control. This seeing does not mean you have to like what they did, or even that you have to continue to associate with them. It simply means you are no longer willing to poison yourself with hatred on their behalf. The empty boat, therefore, is far more than a charming story. It is a powerful contemplative practice. It is a lens we can choose to place over our eyes at any moment. The next time you feel that familiar flash of anger, the next time you feel wronged or slighted, you can pause. You can take a breath, and you can ask yourself, what if that boat is empty? In that question, there is a space, and in that space, there is the possibility of peace. There is the freedom to choose a different response. This deep understanding of the suffering that drives the actions of others is the fertile ground from which true compassion grows. It leads us naturally from a passive state of not being angry to the active, deliberate cultivation of the ultimate antidote to anger, the boundless, universal love known as metta. Through the wisdom of the empty boat, we have found a skillful defense against the poison of anger. We have learned to protect our own inner peace by seeing that the actions of others are often not a personal attack, but a reflection of their own suffering. This is a profound and liberating insight. But the spiritual path is not merely about defense, not just about avoiding the negative. It is also about the active, joyful cultivation of the positive. It is not enough to simply not hate. The path calls us to actively love. It asks us not just to empty our cup of resentment, but to fill it to overflowing with a boundless, unconditional warmth. This is the practice of metta, a Pali word most often translated as loving kindness. Metta is not the sentimental, romantic, or possessive love that is often the subject of songs and poems. It is not an emotion that depends on whether someone is pleasing to us or whether they meet our needs. Metta is a universal, impartial, and unconditional benevolence. It is the simple, heartfelt wish for all beings to be happy and free from suffering. It is the steady, radiant warmth of the sun, which shines on the beautiful flower and the jagged rock alike, without judgment or preference. It is a deep and abiding friendliness toward all of existence. But for many of us, this radiant goodwill can feel like a distant ideal, especially when our own hearts feel cold or closed. How can we genuinely wish for others to be happy when we ourselves are struggling? This is where the practice of metta reveals its deep psychological wisdom. It begins in the one place we so often neglect, with ourselves. Many of us have been raised with the subtle belief that focusing on our own happiness is selfish, that self-love is a form of vanity or narcissism. As a result, we often become our own worst enemies. The inner critic in our mind is a relentless tormentor, speaking to us with a harshness we would never dare use with another human being, let alone a friend. We cannot build a house of compassion on a foundation of self-hatred. To attempt to pour love out into the world from a cup that is empty of self-worth is impossible. It leads only to burnout and resentment. Therefore, the practice of metta always begins with the radical and courageous act of offering loving kindness to ourselves. This is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is self-compassion. It is the recognition of our own struggles, our own imperfections, our own shared humanity. It is the simple, healing act of treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a beloved friend who was going through a difficult time. The formal practice for developing this quality is called metta bhavana, which means the cultivation of loving kindness. It is a systematic meditation that gradually expands the circle of our goodwill. You begin by finding a comfortable posture, closing your eyes, and taking a few breaths to settle the mind. Then, you begin the first stage, directing the warmth of your heart inward. You silently repeat a series of simple, benevolent phrases to yourself. Classic phrases include, "May I be safe," "May I be healthy," "May I be happy," "May I live with ease." As you repeat these words, you try to connect with the intention behind them. It may feel mechanical or even dishonest at first, especially if you are feeling far from happy or at ease. That is perfectly fine. You are not trying to force a feeling. You are planting a seed. With gentle repetition, day after day, that seed will begin to sprout. Once you have spent some time offering metta to yourself, you move to the second stage. You bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel easy, uncomplicated love and respect. It could be a mentor, a family member, or even a beloved pet. You hold their image in your mind and direct the same phrases toward them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This stage is usually much easier. It helps to get the warm feeling of metta flowing freely, opening the heart. In the third stage, you expand the circle further. You bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither strong like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at your grocery store, your mail carrier, a neighbor you pass on the street. You hold this person in your mind and offer them the same wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This is a crucial step. It begins to break down the artificial barriers our minds create between people who matter to me and everyone else. It is the practice of recognizing the humanity in strangers and wishing them well, simply because they are fellow living beings who, just like you, want to be happy. The fourth stage is the most challenging and transformative. Here, you are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict or who has caused you pain. It is essential to approach this stage with wisdom. If the wound is too fresh or the person too traumatic, you can choose someone with whom the difficulty is milder. The purpose here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force a feeling of forgiveness you do not have. The purpose is to liberate yourself. Holding on to anger and resentment is a prison for your own heart. By being able to wish, on some level, that this difficult person be free from their own suffering, the very suffering that causes them to act in harmful ways, you are the one who finds freedom. You are taking the hot coal of hatred out of your own hand. This act is one of ultimate self-care. Finally, in the fifth stage, you let your heart's intention become boundless. You extend the feeling of metta outwards in all directions. First, to everyone in the room with you, then the building, the city, the country. You extend it to all people on the planet. You extend it further to all animals, all creatures in the air, on the land, and in the sea. You extend it to all beings, seen and unseen, in all realms of existence, without any exception. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere be free. This final stage dissolves the remaining boundaries of the self and connects us to the vast web of life in a spirit of universal, loving friendship. This practice is not merely a sentimental exercise, it is a source of immense power. There is a story of the Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, who tried many times to kill him. Having failed with assassins and rock slides, Devadatta devised his most fearsome plot. He arranged for a notoriously fierce elephant named Nalagiri to be fed alcohol until it was in a drunken rage, and then had it released onto the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. Panic erupted. People screamed and fled for their lives. The Buddha's own disciples urged him to run, but the Buddha stood his ground, calm and unafraid. He looked at the trumpeting, charging elephant not with fear or aggression, but with a mind filled with a powerful and radiant metta. It is said that the force of this unconditional love was so tangible that as the elephant drew near, its rage began to melt away. Its charge slowed to a walk, and it finally knelt before the Buddha, tamed by the power of pure benevolence. Metta, then, is not a weak or passive state. It is a formidable force, a strength of heart that can tame the wild elephants of hatred, fear, and violence, both within ourselves and in the world around us. It is not an emotion we must wait to feel. It is a skill we can consciously cultivate. Neuroscience now shows us that practices like this can literally rewire our brains, strengthening the neural pathways for empathy, joy, and emotional stability. By sowing these seeds of goodness in the garden of our own minds, we create a sanctuary of peace for ourselves and a fountain of goodwill for the world. With a heart that has been made resilient and open by this practice, we now possess the strength to turn our attention to one of the most primal and challenging forces we face: the cold, contracting, and powerful emotion of fear. With a heart warmed and expanded by the practice of loving kindness, we find ourselves better equipped to navigate the inner landscape. Metta builds our resilience, our capacity for goodwill and connection. It is the force of expansion. Now, we must turn our attention to its opposite, the cold, contracting, and powerful force of fear. If anger is a hot, explosive fire that pushes outward, fear is a block of ice that freezes us from within. It is a primal emotion, a guardian that was essential for the survival of our ancestors, alerting them to the presence of predators and dangers in the physical world. But in our modern lives, this ancient security system has been hijacked by the mind. It is no longer triggered by the sight of a saber-toothed tiger, but by an email, a social media post, a difficult conversation, or simply a thought about the future. Fear constricts our hearts, limits our possibilities, and keeps us from living with the fullness and courage that is our birthright. To work with fear, we must first understand its anatomy. The most critical thing to recognize is that fear almost always lives in the future. It is a product of imagination, a projection of a negative outcome onto a moment that has not yet happened and may never happen. We are not afraid of the past. We may feel regret, shame, or nostalgia about it, but the visceral, heart-pounding sensation of fear is gone. We are rarely afraid of the immediate present moment either. If you are standing in a burning building, you are not experiencing fear. You are experiencing a direct, life-threatening reality that demands immediate action. Fear is the thought that the building might catch fire. Fear is the story, what if I fail the exam? What if they reject me? What if I get sick? What if I lose my job? It is a constant state of mental rehearsal for a catastrophe that exists only as a phantom in the mind. Our imagination, a magnificent tool for art and innovation, becomes a horror movie director when it is in the service of fear. It does not just produce a single thought. It creates a vivid, feature-length film complete with a dramatic plot, sound effects, and a tragic ending. We don't just worry about a presentation at work. We imagine ourselves standing before our colleagues, forgetting our words, seeing their disappointed faces, feeling the flush of shame, and envisioning the subsequent ruin of our career. We suffer this imagined reality with our entire being. Our palms sweat, our heart races, our stomach ties itself in knots, as if the imagined event were actually happening. It is a testament to the profound power of the mind, but it is a form of self-inflicted torture. As the great writer Mark Twain once wryly observed, "I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened." We suffer far more in imagination than we ever do in reality. The wisdom traditions of the East have long understood this. There is a story told of a young samurai on the eve of his first battle. He was a skilled and courageous warrior, but as he sat in his tent, he was gripped by a cold, paralyzing terror. His mind was a storm of horrific images, visions of his own death and dishonor. He felt his courage draining away. In desperation, he went to the tent of his teacher, a wise old Zen master who was accompanying the army. He hoped the master would give him a secret mantra, a philosophical teaching, or some powerful blessing to dispel his fear. The Zen master listened to the young man's confession, and then, without saying a word, he gestured for the samurai to sit. The master calmly and deliberately began the ancient ritual of the tea ceremony. He heated the water, his movements precise and unhurried. He took a small measure of bright green matcha powder and whisked it in a ceramic bowl until a delicate foam appeared. He then presented the bowl of tea to the terrified samurai. The samurai, though confused, was bound by etiquette. He took the bowl in his hands. It was warm, grounding him. To drink the hot, bitter tea, he had to give it his full attention. He focused on the feeling of the rough ceramic against his palms. He observed the deep, jade-green color of the liquid. He brought the bowl to his lips and inhaled the earthy, grassy aroma. He took a small, careful sip, and the intense, complex flavor filled his senses. For those few moments, his entire world was the bowl of tea. His mind, which had been lost in the catastrophic future, was pulled back into the simple, undeniable reality of the present moment. There was no room for thoughts of the battle, no space for the ghosts of what might happen tomorrow. In the presence of the tea, the fear vanished. When he set the empty bowl down, he looked at the master with new eyes. He understood. The master had not given him a weapon to fight his fear. He had shown him the refuge where fear cannot exist, the fully inhabited present moment. This story reveals the antidote, but facing our fear requires more than just trying to distract ourselves with a cup of tea. It requires a brave and gentle practice of turning towards the fear rather than running away. our instinct is to flee. When the cold feeling of anxiety arises, we immediately reach for our phone, the remote control, the refrigerator, door, anything to numb ourselves and avoid the unpleasant sensation. The mindful approach is to do the complete opposite. It is to stop. It is to be still. It is to turn and face the shadow. The practice begins by shifting your attention from the story in your head to the raw sensations in your body. Ask yourself, where, precisely, do I feel this fear? Is it a tightness in your chest? A hollow feeling in your stomach? A lump in your throat? A buzzing energy in your hands? By investigating the physical manifestation of the emotion, you disconnect it from its terrifying narrative. The story is, my life is falling apart. The raw sensation is just a feeling of pressure in my solar plexus. The story is overwhelming. The sensation, while unpleasant, is manageable. You can be with a sensation. The next step is to breathe with it. Gently direct your breath towards the area of tightness or discomfort. You are not trying to blast it away or force it to leave. You are simply softening around it, creating space for it. Imagine your breath gently cradling the knot of fear, giving it permission to be there. This simple act of allowing sends a powerful signal of safety to your nervous system, calming the ancient fight or flight response. Once a measure of calm has been established, you can bring a gentle curiosity to the fear itself. You can begin to investigate its story, not as a victim, but as a wise detective. Ask it questions, as you would a frightened child. What is it you are truly afraid of? Follow the thread of the fear down to its core. What is the absolute worst thing that could happen in this situation? Look at it squarely, and then ask the most empowering question of all. And if that happened, could I handle it? When you break down the catastrophe into its component parts and assess your own resources, your intelligence, your resilience, your friends, your past successes in overcoming difficulties, the answer is almost always yes. Yes, you could handle it. You are stronger and more resourceful than your fear wants you to believe. Fear is like a monstrous shadow projected on a bedroom wall at night. To a child, it looks terrifyingly real, a giant with claws and teeth. The instinct is to hide under the blankets and hope it goes away. The mindful, courageous approach is to take a deep breath, get out of bed, and walk across the room to turn on the light. When the light of awareness shines on our fears, we almost always discover that the monstrous shadow was being cast by something very small and non-threatening, a pile of clothes on a chair, a toy left on the floor. Our practice is the act of turning on the light. By meeting fear with presence, by feeling it in our bodies, and by investigating it with kind curiosity, we transform it from a paralyzing tyrant into a wise teacher. This difficult, courageous work of facing our inner demons, be it the hot fire of anger or the cold grip of fear, requires a particular inner quality. It is a quiet, steady strength that is often forgotten in our world of instant gratification. It requires the profound power of patience. We have stood face to face with our inner demons. We have learned to meet the hot, explosive fire of anger with the wisdom of the empty boat. We have learned to meet the cold, contracting grip of fear with the warm, steady light of mindful presence. This work is not easy. It is the courageous, essential labor of a lifetime. To engage with these powerful, primal emotions requires a particular kind of strength, a quality that is deeply undervalued and misunderstood in our modern world. It is the quiet, steady, and immensely powerful virtue of patience. In a world that worships speed, our culture has declared war on waiting. We have been conditioned to expect instant gratification in every sphere of our lives. We have one-click ordering, same-day delivery, high-speed internet that streams movies in seconds, and communication that spans the globe in an instant. We celebrate life hacks, shortcuts, and optimizing for maximum efficiency. This relentless pursuit of speed has created a deep and pervasive sickness of haste. We have forgotten that the most important things in life operate on a different timeline, an organic timeline that cannot be hacked or hurried. The healing of a broken heart, the building of a deep and trusting relationship, the mastery of a new skill, the raising of a child, and the cultivation of wisdom, all of these are slow agricultural processes. They require time, care, and a rhythm dictated by nature, not by our own restless demands. Impatience is a form of profound resistance to reality. It is the ego stamping its foot, demanding that the universe conform to its own schedule. It is a manifestation of tanha, the thirst for a different present moment than the one that is actually here. When we are stuck in a traffic jam, impatience is the futile mental argument against the reality of the cars in front of us. When we are waiting for an important piece of news, impatience is the anxious churning of the mind against the simple fact that the time for the news to arrive has not yet come. This constant inner battle against the flow of time is a primary source of our stress, frustration, and anxiety. It is like trying to force a flower to bloom by prying open its petals. All we accomplish is the destruction of the very thing we wish to enjoy. Patience, then, is not merely a virtue, it is a return to sanity. It is the wisdom to align ourselves with the natural unfolding of life, rather than waging a constant, exhausting war against it. There is a beautiful story that illustrates the power and process of patience. The story of the Chinese bamboo tree. When the farmer plants the seed of this remarkable tree, a lesson in faith begins. He waters the soil, he fertilizes it, and he carefully pulls the weeds. 1 year passes, and nothing appears above the ground. A second year passes. He continues to water and care for the empty patch of earth. Still, nothing. A third year, then a fourth. His neighbors, who planted crops with quick and visible results, might laugh at him. They see a fool watering dirt. Yet the farmer continues his patient, daily work, trusting in a process he cannot see. Because while nothing is happening on the surface, something miraculous is happening underground. The seed is growing a vast, complex, and incredibly strong network of roots, spreading deep and wide throughout the soil, creating a powerful and resilient foundation. Then, in the 5th year, the magic happens. A tiny green shoot pokes up through the earth. And in a period of just 6 short weeks, the bamboo tree grows at an astonishing rate, shooting up to heights of 80 or 90 feet. It explodes into the sky with a speed and strength that seems impossible. But was the growth truly sudden? Of course not. The dramatic, visible growth of those 6 weeks was only made possible by the 5 long years of patient, invisible work that came before. Without the strong foundation of the root system, the tall stalk could never be supported. Our own inner growth, our spiritual development, follows precisely this pattern. When we begin a practice like meditation or cultivating compassion, it can often feel like watering empty ground. We sit on the cushion day after day, and our mind still feels like a chaotic jungle. We try to be kinder, and we still lose our temper. We see no immediate dramatic results, and we become discouraged. We think, this isn't working. This is the point where most people give up. But the wisdom of the bamboo farmer teaches us to trust the process. It teaches us that even when we see no external change, if we are applying patient, consistent effort, a powerful root system of wisdom is growing beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. New neural pathways are being formed. Old, reactive habits are being slowly, gently starved of their power. A foundation of mindfulness and compassion is being built. The moments of sudden insight, the breakthroughs of peace, the times when we respond to a difficult situation with unexpected calm, these are the bamboo shoots. They seem to appear out of nowhere, but they are the direct result of all the patient, quiet, and often frustrating work that came before. It is crucial to understand that this kind of patience is not the same as passivity or laziness. The bamboo farmer was not idle. He was actively tending to his crop every single day. Patience is the skillful combination of persistent effort and the surrender of control over the outcome. It is the wisdom to do your part to water the seeds of your practice, and then to let go, trusting that nature will do its part in its own time. Laziness is the absence of effort, often born from apathy or despair. Patience is the presence of effort, born from a deep and abiding trust in the rhythms of life. We can practice this active patience in the small laboratories of our daily lives. When you are caught in a line at the store, you can feel the familiar surge of impatience. Notice it. Feel the tightness in your chest, the restless energy, and instead of fighting it, you can breathe into it. You can use that moment as an opportunity to practice being present, to notice the sights and sounds around you. The line becomes your meditation hall. When you are in a relationship, patience is the grace you give another person to be on their own journey, without demanding that they change on your schedule. It is the understanding that growth is not linear. And most importantly, we must practice patience with ourselves. We are often our own most demanding and unforgiving taskmasters. We expect ourselves to heal from deep wounds overnight, to overcome lifelong habits in a week. Patience is offering ourselves the same compassion as the bamboo farmer, tending to our own inner garden with gentle diligence, knowing that growth is happening, even when it is hidden from our view. Patience is the fertile, silent ground in which all other virtues take root. It is the ultimate expression of trust in the universe and in ourselves. It allows us to face the fires of anger and fear without being consumed, because we know that they, too, are impermanent clouds that will eventually pass. This deep, internal stability, born of compassion, courage, and patience, creates a profound sense of inner peace. Having cultivated this inner foundation, the next question on our path is how we manifest this stability in our interactions with the world. We now turn our attention from the inner world of feeling to the outer world of expression, beginning with the most powerful and creative force we possess, our words. This leads us to the practice of right speech. We have spent time in the quiet, internal world, cultivating the fertile ground of the heart. We have practiced opening to compassion, standing firm in the face of fear, and resting in the deep wisdom of patience. These inner qualities create a sanctuary of peace within us. But we do not live in a vacuum. We are social beings, constantly interacting with the world. The next step on our path, therefore, is to explore how this inner stability translates into our outward expression. The most powerful, frequent, and often unconscious way we impact the world is through our words. Words are vessels of immense power. They are not mere sounds or symbols. They are creative and destructive forces. A single word can start a war or seal a peace treaty. With our words, we can build bridges of connection or dig trenches of separation. Think of your own life. Can you recall a time when a harsh or critical word wounded you so deeply that the scar remains years later? Can you also recall a time when a simple, sincere word of encouragement or kindness lifted you from despair and changed the course of your day or even your life? This is the power we wield every time we speak. Yet, for most of us, our speech is an unconscious habit. We speak reactively, driven by the whims of the monkey mind, spilling our inner state out into the world without awareness or intention. The result is misunderstanding, conflict, and pain. The practice of right speech, the third element of the Noble Eightfold Path, is the art of transforming this unconscious habit into a conscious, compassionate skill. It is the practice of learning to use our words as gifts, not as weapons. The traditional teaching on right speech is elegantly simple, consisting of 4 guidelines, framed as what to abstain from. The first is to abstain from false speech. This is more than just a simple commandment not to tell lies. It is a deep commitment to living in harmony with the truth. It means refusing to knowingly deceive others for our own benefit. It also includes the more subtle forms of dishonesty, exaggeration to make a story more exciting, flattery to manipulate someone, making promises we have no intention of keeping, or telling white lies that erode the foundation of trust. To practice this is to cultivate a mind that is clear and a life that is transparent. There is a profound peace that comes from having nothing to hide, from knowing that your word is your bond. The second guideline is to abstain from divisive speech. This is the kind of speech that sets one person against another. It is slander, backbiting, and spreading rumors. It is speaking ill of someone behind their back, or carrying tales from one person to another to create discord. In our modern world, this manifests powerfully in gossip culture and in the toxic, polarizing nature of much online discourse. We are often tempted to build a sense of connection with one person by creating a common enemy of another. This practice asks us to do the opposite, to use our words to foster harmony, to highlight the good in others, and to build bridges of understanding. If we cannot speak of someone in a way that promotes unity, it is often better not to speak of them at all. The third pillar is to abstain from harsh speech. This is the speech of anger, cruelty, and contempt. It includes yelling, insulting, name-calling, and using sarcasm as a weapon to wound and belittle. This kind of speech never arises from a place of peace. It is always a symptom of our own inner suffering, our own dukkha, and it only ever creates more suffering in the world. It may give the ego a momentary feeling of power, but it closes the heart of the other person and makes any real communication impossible. The practice is to train ourselves in gentleness, to speak to others, even when we disagree with them, with the same respect and kindness we would wish for ourselves. The final guideline is to abstain from idle chatter. This is pointless talk, aimless gossip, and conversation that merely fills silence but has no real substance or purpose. It is the verbal equivalent of junk food. While it may not be as actively harmful as lying or slander, it agitates the mind, scatters our energy, and keeps our awareness tethered to the superficial. It prevents us from resting in the nourishing quiet that allows for deeper insight and peace. The practice is to value silence, and to speak only when our words can be an improvement upon it. These 4 pillars provide a comprehensive guide. To make it even more practical, there is a beautiful teaching that offers a simple filter to use in the moment, known as the 3 gates. Before any words pass your lips, you should first ask them to pass through these 3 gates. The first gate asks the question, is it true? If what you are about to say is not true, then the gate is closed. You should not say it. If it is true, it may proceed to the second gate, which asks, is it necessary? There are many things that may be true, but are completely unnecessary to say. This gate filters out a great deal of idle chatter and unhelpful commentary. If your words are both true and necessary, they arrive at the third and final gate, which asks the crucial question, is it kind? A difficult truth can be a gift that helps another person to grow, but only if it is delivered with a compassionate heart and a gentle tone. If it is spoken with cruelty or contempt, even a true and necessary statement becomes a poison. There is a famous story about the Buddha that serves as a masterclass in right speech, particularly in the power of noble silence. One day, a man who was very angry with the Buddha's teachings came to see him. He stood before the Buddha and unleashed a long and vicious torrent of insults. He called him a fool, a charlatan, and a fraud. The Buddha did not interrupt. He did not defend himself. He simply sat in calm, silent presence, listening with full attention until the man had exhausted his rage. When there was silence, the Buddha asked him a simple question. "My friend," he said, "if you buy a gift for someone and you offer it to them, but that person does not accept the gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, surprised by the question, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha nodded and said, "Exactly, and so it is with your anger. You have offered me this gift of insults and abuse. I do not accept it." The man was stunned into silence, realizing that all the poison he had tried to spew had remained his own. This story also reminds us that right speech is only half of the equation of skillful communication. The other, perhaps more important half, is right listening. The Buddha's silence was not an empty, passive silence. It was a deep, receptive listening. This is the practice of listening with only one aim: to give the other person the space to be heard, to empty their heart, and to suffer less. It means setting aside our own need to respond, to correct, to advise, or to share our own story. It is a gift of pure, non-judgmental presence. Often, this is the most profoundly healing gift we can offer another human being. By practicing right speech, we transform our relationships with others and with ourselves. We create an environment of trust, safety, and harmony around us. We also calm the agitation of our own minds, finding a deep sense of integrity and peace. This mindful attention that we bring to our words is a practice that can be extended to all of our physical activities. Having learned to speak with care, we now turn our attention to the art of living with care, exploring how even the most mundane chores and actions of our daily lives can become a profound spiritual practice. Having brought mindful awareness to our inner world of thoughts and emotions, and to the words we use to express ourselves, we now arrive at the vast landscape of our actions. It is a common belief that a spiritual life is something separate from our ordinary, day-to-day existence. We tend to create a division in our minds. There is spiritual time when we are sitting on a meditation cushion, practicing yoga, or reading a sacred text. And then there is the rest of life: washing the dishes, commuting to work, paying the bills, tasks we often see as mundane chores to be rushed through or endured. Zen practice offers a radical and liberating alternative. It gently dissolves this artificial wall between the sacred and the secular, teaching us that any action, no matter how humble, can be a profound spiritual practice if it is done with total presence and attention. This wisdom is perfectly encapsulated in a famous Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." This simple phrase holds a universe of meaning. It tells us that a spiritual awakening does not necessarily transport us to a different reality where we no longer have to deal with the practicalities of life. The fundamental tasks of existence remain. What changes is not what we are doing, but how we are doing it. Before enlightenment, we chop wood with a mind that is 1,000 miles away. We are resentful of the task, lost in fantasies about a different life, or consumed by anxieties about the future. We are not really chopping wood. We are rehearsing our grievances and fears, and the chopping is just a mechanical, joyless backdrop. We carry the water with the same impatience, seeing it as a heavy burden that stands between us and what we would rather be doing. Our body is in one place, but our mind is somewhere else entirely. We are fragmented, and this fragmentation is a source of deep dissatisfaction. After enlightenment, or more realistically, as we cultivate a practice of mindfulness, the activity remains the same, but our relationship to it is transformed. We chop the wood, and our attention is fully with the chopping. We feel the satisfying weight of the axe in our hands. We notice the rough texture of the bark. We are aware of the sharp, clean scent of the pine. We hear the crisp sound as the blade splits the log. Our mind and body are united in the action. The chopping is no longer a means to an end. It is the whole of life in that moment. We carry the water, and we are fully present for the carrying. We feel the strain in our shoulders, the coolness of the bucket handle against our fingers, the rhythmic sloshing of the water, the precise feeling of our feet making contact with the earth. The action ceases to be a chore and becomes a meditation, a dance with reality. There is a classic story that perfectly illustrates this principle. A young monk, full of intellectual curiosity, approached a renowned Zen master. He had studied many complex scriptures and was eager for a profound, philosophical teaching that would unlock the ultimate secret of Zen. He bowed before the master and asked, "Venerable sir, what is the most fundamental principle of Zen?" The master looked at him, his gaze calm and direct, and asked a simple question in return. "Have you eaten your morning rice porridge yet?" The young monk, taken aback by such an ordinary question, replied, "Yes, master, I have." The master then gave his instruction, "Then go wash your bowl." In that moment, it is said that the young monk experienced a deep awakening. He suddenly understood that the secret of Zen was not hidden in a cryptic doctrine or an esoteric ritual. The secret was to be found in the complete, wholehearted, and mindful execution of the task at hand. His life was not a dress rehearsal for some future spiritual event. His life, right now, was the practice. Washing the bowl was Zen. We suffer because we create this false division between what we consider important and what we consider trivial. We rush through washing the dishes so we can get to the important task of watching television. We endure the boring commute so we can get to the real work at the office. We see our life as a series of obstacles to be overcome in order to arrive at some future moment of peace or happiness. But since our lives are overwhelmingly composed of these ordinary moments, we end up living in a state of perpetual impatience, always trying to get somewhere else, never fully arriving where we are. The practice of finding the sacred in the mundane is the practice of arriving. It is the conscious decision to treat every moment as worthy of our full attention. You can begin this practice today, in your own home. The next time you wash the dishes, decide to make it your sole meditation. Put away your phone, turn off the television, and just wash the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water as it flows over your hands. Notice the slippery texture of the soap. See the iridescent colors in the bubbles. Hear the sound of a plate being scrubbed clean. When your mind wanders, as it inevitably will, to a worry about work or a plan for the evening, gently notice that it has wandered, and then guide it back to the reality of the water, the soap, the plate. Treat each dish as if it were the most important object in the universe, because in that moment, it is. You can do this with any activity. When you are walking, whether it is down a city street or from your desk to the kitchen, you can practice walking meditation. Instead of being lost in thought, bring your attention to the physical sensations of walking. Feel your heel making contact with the ground, then the ball of your foot, then your toes lifting off. Notice the subtle shift of weight from one leg to the other. You don't need to be in a monastery to practice walking meditation. Any walking will do. When you drink your morning coffee or tea, take the first 3 sips with this kind of mindful presence. Before you dive into your day, give yourself the gift of those 3 sips, fully experiencing the warmth, the aroma, and the taste. Let it be a brief, potent ceremony of presence. The underlying principle is simple, one thing at a time. When you are eating, just eat. When you are listening, just listen. When you are washing your bowl, just wash your bowl. By infusing these simple, repetitive tasks with our full awareness, we reclaim our lives from the tyranny of distraction and impatience. We discover that there are no wasted moments. Every action, every chore, becomes an opportunity to be awake, to be present, and to find a quiet sense of dignity and peace. By learning to find the sacred in these small daily actions, we build the capacity and the foundation to bring this same quality of mindful presence to the largest and most consuming activity of our adult lives, our work. Applying this undivided attention to the way we earn our living is a profound challenge, and the next great step on our journey. It is the practice of right livelihood. Having learned to bring mindful attention to our words and to the simple, ordinary actions of our daily lives, we now arrive at the domain that occupies the largest portion of our waking hours, our work. For many of us, our job is a source of immense stress, a relentless demand on our time and energy that we feel is fundamentally separate from our quest for inner peace. We partition our lives. There is the person we are at work, and the person we are at home or on our meditation cushion. The practice of right livelihood, the 5th element of the Noble Eightfold Path, seeks to dissolve this wall. It teaches us that our work is not an obstacle to our spiritual path. It is one of its most potent and important arenas. It is the practice of aligning the way we earn a living with our deepest values of wisdom and compassion. In the time of the Buddha, the guidelines for right livelihood, or samma ajiva, were relatively straightforward. They involved abstaining from professions that caused direct and obvious harm to living beings. This included work as a butcher, a dealer in weapons, a trader in poisons or intoxicants, or a trafficker of human beings. These guidelines remain as relevant today as they were 25 centuries ago. If our work directly profits from the suffering or exploitation of others, it is fundamentally at odds with the path of peace and compassion. But in our complex, interconnected global economy, the practice of right livelihood calls for a deeper and more subtle inquiry. It asks us to look beyond the obvious and to honestly examine the ripple effects of our work in the world. We must ask ourselves challenging questions. Does my work contribute to the collective thirst, the tanha, that fuels so much suffering? For instance, if I work in advertising, am I using my creativity to manufacture feelings of inadequacy and desire in others, simply to sell a product they may not need? Does my work thrive on creating division and outrage? In some forms of media or political campaigning, does my success depend on stoking the fires of fear, anger, and tribalism? Does my work harm our planet, our collective home, by contributing to pollution or the depletion of natural resources? Does my profession require me to be deceptive, to compromise my integrity, or to treat other people as mere instruments for profit? These are not easy questions, and they do not have simple answers. The purpose of asking them is not to generate guilt, but to cultivate a clear-eyed awareness of how our professional lives intersect with our deepest ethical intentions. This inquiry can be daunting, and for many, the idea of changing careers is simply not a practical option. This is where we must understand the inner dimension of right livelihood. The practice is not always about changing what you do. It is often about radically changing how you do it, and your inner relationship to it. There is an old Taoist parable about a stonecutter that beautifully illustrates this inner journey for meaning. The stonecutter worked long, hard hours under the hot sun, chipping away at a great mountain of rock. He was poor, and his work was grueling. One day, a wealthy merchant passed by, carried in an ornate chair by his servants, shaded by a silk parasol. The stonecutter looked at him with envy and thought, "Oh, to be so powerful! I wish I were that merchant." A spirit heard his wish, and instantly he became the wealthy merchant. He enjoyed the luxury, but soon he saw a high government official pass by, preceded by soldiers clearing his path. The merchant thought, "That is true power. I wish I were that official." And so he became the official. But on a hot day, the sun beat down on him. relentless, and inescapable, and he realized the sun was more powerful still. He wished to be the sun, and he became the sun, blazing down on the earth. Then, a dark storm cloud drifted in front of him, blocking his rays and robbing him of his power. He wished to be the cloud, and he became the cloud, unleashing rain and floods upon the land. But soon he found himself pushed and pulled by a great force he could not resist: the wind. He wished to be the wind, and he became the wind, howling across the plains, uprooting trees. But then he came up against something that would not yield, something immense, solid, and immovable, a great mountain of rock. He realized the mountain was the most powerful thing of all, and so he wished to be the mountain. He became the mountain, feeling mighty and indestructible. But as he stood there, in his magnificent stillness, he felt a persistent, annoying, chipping at his base. He looked down and saw a tiny, insignificant figure with a hammer and chisel, slowly, patiently, chipping away at his stone. In that moment, he realized that the humble stonecutter had power over the mighty mountain, and he wished for nothing more than to be himself again. And so he became a stonecutter once more, toiling under the hot sun. But this time, his heart was at peace, for he understood the dignity and power in his own work. This story teaches us that meaning is not found by constantly looking outside of ourselves, by believing that happiness resides in another person's role or another station in life. Meaning is an inside job. It is found by bringing our whole being to what we are already doing. The practice of right livelihood, for most of us, is the practice of being a mindful stonecutter. It is about transforming our relationship with the work we have. Even if your job seems mundane or disconnected from your spiritual values, you can make it a part of your path. You can practice right speech with your colleagues, choosing kindness over criticism and harmony over gossip. You can practice right action by being honest and reliable. You can practice right effort by bringing a sense of care and excellence to your tasks, no matter how small. You can transform your workplace into your monastery. You can also reframe your work in terms of its contribution. It is easy to lose sight of how our work serves others. The accountant who diligently keeps the books provides the order and stability that allows a company to employ people. The janitor who cleans the office provides a safe and healthy environment for everyone to work in. The software engineer who fixes a bug may be helping millions of people to connect with their families or access vital information by tracing the chain of service, by finding the thread of how your effort, no matter how humble, reduces the suffering or increases the well-being of others. You can infuse your work with a profound sense of purpose. Ultimately, your real livelihood is the work you do on your own mind. Your profession is simply the workshop where this inner work takes place. Seeing it this way liberates you from the need for your job to be the sole source of your identity or fulfillment. Right livelihood is therefore not a rigid prescription for what job you should have. It is a living, breathing practice of bringing your full, conscious, and ethical self to the work that you do. It is about closing the gap between who you are on Sunday morning and who you are on Monday morning. It is about making your entire life a seamless expression of your path. By integrating our work into our practice, we begin to address the very engine of our modern economy and a primary source of our personal tanha, the ceaseless pursuit of material wealth and possessions. This naturally brings us to a crucial question. What is the nature of true wealth? This leads us to confront the powerful and pervasive illusion of materialism. Having explored the path of right livelihood, we see how our work can be integrated into our spiritual practice. A huge part of that work, for most people in the modern world, is the earning of money to acquire the things we believe we need for a happy life. This brings us face to face with one of the most powerful and pervasive illusions of our time. The belief that happiness can be bought, that wealth is measured by what we accumulate, and that more is always better. The wisdom of Zen and Buddhism offers a radical and liberating counter-proposal. It suggests that true wealth is not found in having many things, but in needing very few. It is the supreme wealth of contentment. Our modern consumer society is an architecture of dissatisfaction. It is a machine designed with breathtaking ingenuity for one purpose: to manufacture tanha, the thirst for more. Its very survival depends on its ability to convince you, on a deep and subconscious level, that you are not enough as you are. Advertising rarely just sells you a product, it sells you a fantasy of the better person you will become once you acquire it. It doesn't sell you a car, it sells you freedom and status. It doesn't sell you a cosmetic, it sells you confidence and love. It doesn't sell you a phone, it sells you connection and importance. This system masterfully creates a problem, a feeling of lack, of boredom, of social anxiety, and then presents its product as the magical solution. This cycle is endless. The luxury item that promised fulfillment last year is now outdated, replaced by a newer, better, more desirable version. We are conditioned to live in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction with what we have, and perpetual desire for what we don't. We have been trained to be excellent consumers, but poor inhabitants of our own lives. There is a story from ancient Greece that, while not Buddhist in origin, perfectly embodies the spirit of this teaching. It concerns the philosopher Diogenes the Cynic, a man who lived a life of radical simplicity. He owned almost nothing, famously choosing to live in a large ceramic jar in the marketplace of Athens to prove that a human being needs very little to live a virtuous life. One of his few remaining possessions was a simple wooden cup, which he used to drink water from public fountains. One day, he saw a young boy who had no cup at all, simply cupping his hands together to scoop water from the stream and drink from them. Diogenes watched the boy for a long moment, and a look of profound realization dawned on his face. He turned to his followers and exclaimed, "A child has beaten me in plainness of living." He then threw his own cup to the ground, smashing it, having realized that even this simple object was an unnecessary luxury, a possession he did not truly need. This story is an extreme, but its wisdom is potent. It is an invitation to question everything we believe we need. It is the practice of looking at our lives not from the perspective of, what more can I add, but from the perspective of, what can I let go of? We spend so much of our life, energy or precious time, our vitality, our mental space in the acquisition and maintenance of things. This brings with it a series of hidden burdens that we rarely stop to acknowledge. First is the burden of acquisition itself. We trade finite hours of our one and only life, working at jobs we may not even enjoy, to earn the money to buy things that often provide only fleeting pleasure. We sacrifice our life force for material objects. Second is the burden of maintenance. Every object we own owns a piece of us in return. The large house must be cleaned, repaired, and insured. The complex car must be serviced. The vast wardrobe must be organized. Our possessions demand our time, our energy, and our attention, cluttering not just our physical space, but our mental space as well. Third is the burden of fear. Once we possess something we deem valuable, a new anxiety is born, the fear of losing it. We worry about our possessions being broken, stolen, or damaged. The more we have, the more we have to protect, and the more we have to fear losing. Our castle becomes our prison. And perhaps the most toxic burden of all is the burden of comparison. Materialism locks us onto an endless and unwinnable treadmill. As soon as we acquire the new phone, the new car, or the new house, our moment of satisfaction is immediately spoiled by the sight of someone else who has a bigger, better, or newer version. We are conditioned to constantly look outside of ourselves, to measure our worth by comparing our possessions to those of others. This is a game that is mathematically designed to produce misery, guaranteed to generate feelings of envy, inadequacy, and resentment. The antidote to this sickness of materialism is the practice of contentment, known in the Buddhist tradition as Santuti. It is the cultivation of the wisdom of enough. It is the discovery that the joy we are seeking cannot be found in the marketplace. This is a practice we can begin right now. The first step is to create a sacred pause before any non-essential purchase. In our world of one-click buying, impulse is our enemy. By instituting a mandatory waiting period, perhaps 24 hours for a small item, a week for a larger one, we break the hypnotic spell of compulsive consumerism. We give our wisdom a chance to catch up with our desire. During this pause, we can ask ourselves a few honest questions. First, do I truly need this, or do I just want it? Be ruthlessly honest. Is this essential for your well-being, or is it a passing fancy? Second, what is the real reason I want this? Look beneath the surface desire. Are you feeling bored, lonely, sad, or insecure? Are you hoping that this object will act as a balm for an inner wound? A new possession is a very poor substitute for genuine self-worth or connection. And third, Will this truly bring me lasting happiness? Be realistic. The thrill of a new purchase fades incredibly quickly, often within days or even hours, leaving behind only the object itself and the burdens that come with it. Alongside this practice of mindful consumption is the even more powerful practice of gratitude for what we already have. It is the simple act of shifting our focus from what is lacking in our lives to what is abundant. To take a moment each day to appreciate the simple miracle of having a roof over our head, food to eat, clean water to drink, and people who care for us. This is the real fortune. True wealth is not a number in a bank account. It is the richness of a simple life. A life where our time and energy are not consumed by the frantic pursuit of more, but are free to be invested in the things that have real value. Our relationships, our creativity, our connection with nature, and the cultivation of our own inner peace. By discovering the profound wealth of needing nothing, we liberate ourselves from the chains of materialism. This liberation frees up an immense amount of mental energy that is often hijacked by one of materialism's most powerful allies, the poison of social comparison. Having liberated ourselves from the endless pursuit of material possessions, we encounter another, more subtle trap. It is the deep and often unconscious habit of comparison. We look at our lives, our accomplishments, our relationships, and our very selves, and we measure them against the lives of others. This mental act of measurement, this constant social comparison, is one of the most pervasive and poisonous sources of unhappiness in the modern world. It has rightly been called the thief of joy, for it can steal the contentment from any situation, no matter how good it may be. Our modern technology has created a super engine for this form of suffering: social media. As we scroll through our feeds, we are presented with a relentless, curated stream of perfection. We see our friends on sun-drenched vacations, our colleagues announcing career triumphs, acquaintances celebrating picture-perfect family moments, and strangers displaying flawless bodies and seemingly effortless success. We are inundated with a highlight reel of the best, most beautiful, and most exciting moments of other people's lives. And as we watch this parade of perfection, we are acutely aware of our own unedited reality. We are not on a beach in Bali. We are sitting on our couch on a Tuesday night. Our kitchen is not a marvel of minimalist design. It has dirty dishes in the sink. We are not celebrating a promotion. We are feeling a quiet flicker of self-doubt. Herein lies the trap, a psychological fallacy of immense proportions. We are comparing our messy, complex, and unedited behind-the-scenes footage with everyone else's meticulously produced and filtered highlight reel. We are comparing our whole, nuanced reality, with all its struggles and boredom, to a tiny, polished sliver of someone else's performance. It is a game that is fundamentally rigged, a comparison that is guaranteed to make us feel as though we are uniquely flawed or falling behind. We forget that behind the perfect family portrait was an argument just moments before. We forget that behind the career announcement were years of struggle and rejection. We forget that behind the fitness photo is a person with their own deep insecurities. This distorted perception of reality is a powerful machine for generating anxiety, inadequacy, and a profound sense of being alone in our struggles. The act of comparison, regardless of its outcome, inevitably leads to suffering. It is a coin with two sides, and both sides are poison. On one side, when we compare ourselves to others and feel that we come up short, we experience the sharp pain of inferiority. This gives rise to envy, a corrosive emotion that resents the good fortune of others. It breeds jealousy, self-pity, and a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy. It reinforces the core belief of, "I am not enough," which is the very heart of dukkha. On the other side of the coin, when we compare ourselves and decide that we are better than someone else, we experience the fleeting, precarious pleasure of superiority. This feeds the ego. It creates pride, arrogance, and a subtle contempt for others. While it may provide a temporary boost to our self-esteem, it is an unstable and dangerous state. It disconnects us from our shared humanity, making our sense of self-worth dependent on the perceived failings of others. This, too, is a form of suffering. It is the prison of the ego, a fragile fortress that requires constant defense and leaves us feeling isolated and secretly insecure. Whether we feel inferior or superior, The very act of comparison strengthens the illusion of a separate, solid self that needs to be measured and ranked. It pulls us away from peace and into the turbulent world of judgment. The wisdom of Zen offers a simple and beautiful metaphor to help us escape this trap. Imagine you are walking through a magnificent garden. It is filled with a vast diversity of flowers. There are proud, towering sunflowers, intricate and thorny roses, pure white lilies, and humble, vibrant daisies. The rose does not waste a single drop of its energy trying to become a lily. It does not look at the sunflower and feel inadequate because it is not as tall. The lily does not envy the complex, layered petals of the rose. Each flower is simply and completely engaged in the business of being itself. It draws nourishment from the same sun and the same soil, but it expresses that nourishment in its own unique and unrepeatable way. The garden is beautiful not because all the flowers are the same, but precisely because they are different. Its splendor lies in its diversity. We are like the flowers in that garden. Each of us has our own unique set of conditions, our own history, our own strengths, and our own path to walk. To compare our journey to someone else's is as pointless and as tragic as a daisy wishing it were an orchid. Our work is not to become a copy of someone else, but to become the most authentic and fully realized version of ourselves. Our work is to blossom where we are planted. The direct antidote to the poison of envy and comparison is a practice known as mudita, or sympathetic joy. It is one of the 4 divine abodes, or sublime states of mind, alongside loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. Mudita is the practice of training our hearts to feel genuine, selfless joy in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is a radical act of rebellion against the scarcity mindset of the ego, which believes that happiness is a limited resource. The ego thinks, if you get a piece of the pie, there is less for me. Mudita realizes that joy is not a pie, it is a bonfire, and when another person adds their log to it, the fire burns brighter for everyone. You can practice this directly, especially when you feel the pang of envy arise while looking at social media. Notice the feeling. Acknowledge the contraction in your chest. Then, consciously pivot. Take a breath, look at the image of the happy person, and silently say to them, "How wonderful for you. I am happy that you are experiencing this joy. May your happiness continue and grow." It may feel forced at first, but with practice, it becomes a new, joyful habit. You begin to see the success of others, not as a threat to your own self-worth, but as evidence of the beautiful possibilities that life holds. It makes your heart vast and generous. Ultimately, the path to freedom lies in changing the direction of our gaze. The habit of comparison is to constantly look sideways at our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends. This is a path of guaranteed frustration. The skillful path is to look vertically. The only comparison that is fruitful and conducive to growth is to compare the person you are today to the person you were yesterday. Am I a little kinder today than I was last year? Am I a little more patient? Is my mind a little calmer? This is the only competition that matters, and it is one in which we can all be winners. By letting go of the exhausting burden of comparison, we reclaim a vast amount of mental and emotional energy. We are free to stop judging our own flower and to start nurturing it instead. This journey of moving beyond the external traps of materialism and social comparison inevitably leads us to a more intimate and often more challenging place. It leads us to turn inward and examine our relationship with our own story, our own flaws, and our own history of pain. It prepares us to find the unexpected and profound beauty that is hidden in our own scars. Having learned to quiet the relentless urge to compare ourselves with others, we now turn that compassionate gaze inward. We arrive at one of the most intimate and challenging aspects of our journey, our relationship with our own imperfections. We live in a culture that worships flawlessness. We are taught to present a polished, perfect facade to the world. We use filters to smooth our skin in photographs. We carefully curate our resumes to omit any hint of failure, and we speak of our past traumas in hushed tones, if we speak of them at all. We have learned to be ashamed of our scars, to hide our cracks, to see our broken parts as evidence of our inadequacy. There is a profound and beautiful alternative to this painful quest for perfection. It comes to us from the ancient artistic and philosophical tradition of Japan. It is the art of kintsugi. Kintsugi, which translates as golden joinery, is the art of repairing broken pottery. Imagine a beautiful, cherished ceramic tea bowl, an object of simplicity and grace. One day, through a moment of carelessness, it slips from your hands and shatters on the floor. The immediate, instinctive feeling is one of tragedy. The bowl is ruined. Its perfection is lost forever. In our Western throwaway culture, the most likely next step would be to sweep up the pieces and discard them. A second option might be to painstakingly glue the pieces back together, trying our best to make the cracks invisible, to pretend the break never happened, to restore the bowl to a semblance of its former, perfect state. Kintsugi offers a third, far more profound path. The kintsugi master carefully gathers every broken piece, even the tiniest shards. They do not see the break as an end, but as an essential part of the object's history. They meticulously reassemble the bowl, but instead of using invisible adhesive, they use a special lacquer mixed with glittering, powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The process is slow and deliberate. When it is finished, the bowl is not merely repaired, it is transformed. The cracks are not hidden, they are illuminated. They are now the most beautiful feature of the piece, a network of shimmering golden veins that tell a story of resilience. The bowl is now more beautiful, more interesting, and more valuable because it was broken. The damage is not a source of shame, but a celebrated part of its unique identity. This art form is not just a method for repairing pottery. It is a living metaphor for the healing of the human spirit. You are that golden bowl. Your cracks are the unique and unavoidable fractures of your life. They are the failures you have endured, the grief you have carried, the relationships that broke your heart. They are the mistakes you are ashamed of, the traumas that have shaped you, the anxieties you wrestle with. Our culture teaches us to view these cracks as flaws to be concealed. We fall into the trap of perfectionism, holding ourselves to an impossible, inhuman standard of flawlessness, and then berating ourselves when we inevitably fall short. This striving for an unblemished life is a form of self-violence. It denies our very humanity, which is inherently messy, vulnerable, and beautifully imperfect. We spend so much energy presenting a smooth, uncracked surface to the world, and this performance is utterly exhausting. The philosophy of kintsugi invites us to stop this painful performance. It suggests that our healing does not come from pretending we were never broken. It comes from lovingly acknowledging and integrating our broken parts. And what is the golden lacquer we use to mend our own souls? It is self-compassion. It is the practice of meeting our own pain, our own failures, and our own imperfections with the same gentle, non-judgmental awareness we would offer to a beloved friend. When we feel the shame of a past mistake, instead of pushing it away or criticizing ourselves, we can breathe into it with kindness. We can acknowledge the pain and learn the lesson, and in doing so, we are tracing that crack with gold. When we feel the grief of a past loss, instead of numbing ourselves, we can allow ourselves to feel it fully, holding our own sorrow with a tender heart. This is the golden repair. The compassion we bring to our own suffering is the precious material that not only mends the break, but makes us more whole, more beautiful, and far stronger than we were before. Our scars are not signs of weakness. They are a testament to our resilience. They are proof that we have lived, that we have taken risks, that we have loved deeply, and that we have survived. A life without scars would be a life that was never truly lived. Our vulnerabilities are not defects. They are the very things that make us human, that allow us to connect with others in a spirit of authentic empathy. It is through our own healed wounds that we learn to tend to the wounds of others. The cold, sterile beauty of a mass-produced, perfect object has no character, no story. True beauty has soul. Our imperfections, and the grace with which we learn to hold them, are what give us our soul. Furthermore, resilience is not the quality of being unbreakable. That is mere rigidity, which is brittle. True resilience is the capacity to break, and then to heal stronger at the broken places. The golden seams of a kintsugi bowl are said to be stronger than the original, unbroken ceramic. In the same way, when we have the courage to face our traumas and integrate them with compassionate awareness, we develop a new and formidable strength. We are not defined by our breaks, but by the beautiful, golden way we have put ourselves back together. This is a practice you can bring into your own life. You can begin to reframe your personal story. That failure at work was not the end of your worth. It was a painful but powerful lesson in humility that became a golden seam of wisdom. That heartbreaking relationship was not a sign that you are unlovable. It was a crack that, when healed, expanded your capacity for compassion for yourself and for others. You can begin to honor your scars. Instead of hiding the parts of your past that bring you shame, you can learn to look at them with kindness, to thank them for the lessons they taught you, and to see how they have contributed to the unique and resilient person you are today. With trusted friends, sharing our vulnerabilities, our cracks, can be a powerful act of healing and connection. It gives others permission to be imperfect too. Kintsugi teaches us to let go of the exhausting, impossible pursuit of perfection. It invites us to fall in love with our own messy, beautiful, scarred, and resilient humanity. By embracing our imperfections, we become more whole. This radical act of self-acceptance liberates us from the heavy burden of needing to be flawless and serious all the time. It creates an inner space of freedom, a space where we can be more playful, more authentic, and more open to the great paradoxes of life. This newfound lightness prepares us to engage with some of the most baffling, humorous, and mind-breaking tools in the Zen tradition. It prepares us for the gateless gate of the Zen koan. Having embraced our own beautiful imperfections with the spirit of kintsugi, we find ourselves standing on new ground. We are less rigid, less attached to the idea of being a perfect, flawless self. This newfound acceptance creates an inner spaciousness, a willingness to be with life as it is, in all its messy, paradoxical glory. Our journey so far has relied heavily on a kind of spiritual logic. We have examined cause and effect, analyzed the nature of suffering, and followed a clear, structured path. But the Zen tradition, in its profound wisdom, understands that there is a point where logic, our most trusted tool, becomes a barrier. There is a point where the thinking mind, which has brought us this far, must be gracefully transcended. To take this next leap, Zen employs one of its most unique, baffling, and powerful tools, the koan. Our intellect is a magnificent instrument. It allows us to navigate the world, to solve complex problems, to build, to create, and to reason. It operates by dissecting reality, by labeling things, by placing them into categories: good and bad, right and wrong, self and other. It creates a map of the world. But Zen is not interested in the map. It is interested in the territory. The intellect can produce a flawless chemical analysis of water, but it can never give you the direct, lived experience of what it feels like to be wet. The intellect can describe the menu in exquisite detail, but it can never satisfy your hunger. The deepest truths of existence, Zen suggests, are not concepts to be understood by the thinking mind, but realities to be experienced directly. The koan is a tool designed to shatter our reliance on the map and plunge us directly into the river. So, what is a koan? It is crucial, first, to understand what it is not. A koan is not a riddle with a clever punchline that can be figured out. It is not a logical puzzle that can be solved with a brilliant deduction. It is not a nonsensical question meant to prove that life is meaningless. A koan is best understood as a question or a story, often from a real encounter between a Zen master and a student that cannot be answered by the rational mind. It is a spiritual probe, a great doubt that is given to a student to meditate upon day and night. Its purpose is to exhaust the intellect, to push the logical mind into a corner until it is forced to surrender. Perhaps the most famous koan, one that has seeped into Western culture, comes from the Japanese master Hakuin. 2 hands clap, and there is a sound. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The moment you hear this, your problem-solving mind goes to work. It might answer, "It is silence," or "It is the sound of the air rushing past the hand." The Zen master would reject all of these answers because they are products of logic. The koan is not asking for a description. It is pointing towards a reality beyond the duality of sound and silence. Another famous koan asks, "What was your original face? The face you had before your father and mother were born?" This question immediately bypasses your personal history, your conditioned personality, your very body, and asks you to experience your true, timeless nature. One of the most shocking koans is, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him." This is not a literal instruction to violence. It is a powerful command to destroy your conceptual, idealized, external image of Buddha or enlightenment, so that you can discover the living truth for yourself, within yourself. The way a student traditionally works with a koan is a process of intense, focused effort. The student is instructed to become one with the question. They pour all of their mental energy into it. When they are walking with, what is the sound of one hand clapping? When they are eating with it. The intellect, being a relentless machine, will produce dozens, even hundreds of potential answers. The student then goes for a private interview with the master and presents their solution. The master, with unwavering clarity, simply rejects it. No, that's not it. Go back and work harder. This process can go on for months, even years. It is designed to generate a state of immense creative frustration. The student's mind is like a mouse trapped in a room, desperately scurrying about, trying every possible crack and corner, only to find no exit. Eventually, the mouse, utterly exhausted, simply collapses. In the same way, the student's rational mind, having tried every logical, philosophical, and poetic trick it knows, finally realizes its own utter inadequacy. It gives up. It exhausts itself into a profound state of don't know, a silence that is not empty or passive, but pregnant with energy, like a bowstring pulled taut. And then, the breakthrough happens. It is called Satori, or Kensho in Zen. It is a sudden, intuitive flash of insight, a direct seeing into the heart of the koan and into the nature of reality itself. It almost never happens when the student is formally meditating and trying to solve the problem. It might happen while they are sweeping the temple steps, or hearing the sound of a pebble striking a piece of bamboo, or washing their bowl. In a moment when the intellect has finally fallen silent, reality reveals itself, and in that flash of seeing, the koan is no longer a question. It is answered, not with a concept, but with a total transformation of perspective. The student has not figured out the koan. The koan has, in a sense, figured out the student. It has broken them open to a new way of being. While most of us may not be formally practicing with a Zen master, life itself presents us with koans all the time. These are the deep, paradoxical questions of our existence that logic cannot solve. How can I love my family with all my heart, and at the same time accept the truth of anicca, that I will one day lose them? How can I embrace myself with the unconditional compassion of kintsugi, and also hold the sincere intention to grow and be a better person? How can I act with courage and conviction in the world, while knowing the truth of anatta, that there is no solid self to do the acting? These are not problems to be solved. There is no formula that can provide the answer. They are paradoxes to be lived. They are creative tensions to be held with an open and spacious heart. The answer is not found in a neat, logical conclusion, but in the wisdom, grace, and compassion with which we navigate the question, day by day. The koan, then, is a practice of radical trust. It is the trust that there is a deeper way of knowing than the one offered by our rational mind. It is a tool for cracking open the shell of our conceptual reality, to let the light of direct experience pour in. This journey of systematically deconstructing our own mental barriers, of going beyond our own cherished logic, leads us to the final and most profoundly empowering destination on our path. It leads us to the realization that the peace, the wisdom, the freedom we have been so diligently seeking is not something we need to find, to build, or to acquire. It is something that has been patiently waiting for us all along, hidden in plain sight, at the very core of our own being. This is the discovery of our own, innate Buddha nature. We have traveled a great distance together on this inner journey. We began with a mind like a cup filled to overflowing with the noise and anxiety of the world. We learned to empty that cup with a beginner's mind, to sit on the bank of the river of our thoughts, and to find our anchor in the simple, steady rhythm of the breath. We have confronted the great realities of impermanence and the illusion of a separate self. We have looked squarely into the face of our suffering and have seen its cause in our own clinging and craving. We have walked the Eightfold Path, exploring the nature of compassion, patience, fear, and right action. We have even wrestled with the mind-bending paradox of the Zen koan, pushing beyond the limits of logic itself. And now, we arrive at the final destination of our path, only to discover that it is the very place from which we started. This is the ultimate teaching, the secret that was never hidden, the truth that has been waiting patiently for us all along, the Zen master we have been seeking, the peace we have been craving, is already within us. There is a parable in the Lotus Sutra, one of the great texts of Mahayana Buddhism, that speaks directly to this truth. It is the story of a very poor man who lives in a wretched, dilapidated hut. His clothes are rags, he is often hungry, and his life is a daily struggle for survival. He is convinced of his own destitution. Every day, he goes out into the world to beg for scraps, his heart filled with a sense of lack and despair. He believes that his happiness depends entirely on what he can receive from the outside world. What this poor man does not know is that buried just beneath the dirt floor of his own humble hut, there is an immense and priceless treasure. A chest filled with gold, shimmering jewels, and countless riches has been there all along, but he is completely unaware of its presence. He travels far and wide, enduring hardship and humiliation in his search for sustenance, while sleeping every night just inches above a fortune that could end his suffering forever. One day, a wise and compassionate friend who knows about the hidden treasure comes to visit. Seeing the man's misery, the friend does not simply give him a handout. Instead, he points to the floor of the hut and says, "My friend, stop your searching. Everything you have ever looked for is right here. Dig." The man, at first incredulous, finally begins to dig, and there, in his own home, he unearths the treasure. He realizes he was never truly poor. He was a wealthy man who simply did not know his own wealth. We are all this person. We live our lives in a state of perceived spiritual poverty, feeling that we are lacking, that we are incomplete, that we need something from the outside, a new relationship, a better job, a spiritual experience, the approval of others to finally be happy. Our life is the hut. The constant, restless seeking for external solutions is the begging, and the hidden treasure, buried right here within our own body and mind, is our own innate, perfect, and indestructible Buddha nature. This is perhaps the most profound and hopeful teaching in all of Buddhism. Buddha nature, or Tathagatagarbha, is the inherent potential for full enlightenment that exists within every single living being. It is not something we have to create, build, or earn. It is our fundamental nature, our factory setting. It is a core of pristine awareness, boundless compassion, and unshakable wisdom that is as essential to our being as the sky is to the world. The only problem is that we don't see it. Our Buddha nature is like the brilliant, limitless blue sky. It is always present, always pure, always vast. But on most days, it is obscured by clouds. These clouds are the temporary defilements of our mind, our greed, our anger, our anxieties, our judgments, our traumatic memories, our endless stream of thoughts. Looking up at a thick layer of grey clouds, we might mistakenly believe that the sky itself is grey. We might forget that the blue even exists. But the blue sky has not gone anywhere. It has not been stained or diminished by the clouds. It is simply, temporarily, obscured. Our entire spiritual practice, the meditation, all the compassion, all the wisdom we cultivate is not about creating a blue sky. It is the gentle and patient process of allowing the clouds to disperse, so that the magnificent, ever-present blue sky of our own true nature can be revealed. This is why the great Zen masters have always warned their students. The teaching is nothing but a finger pointing at the moon. All of the concepts we have explored on this journey, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the teachings on no self, even these very words are the finger. They are skillful means, useful pointers, helpful maps that can orient us in the right direction. The moon is the direct, living experience of your own awakened heart, the radiant light of your own Buddha nature. The great danger on any spiritual path is to mistake the finger for the moon. We can become scholars of the finger, endlessly analyzing its shape and texture. We can collect spiritual concepts and philosophies, like fascinating objects, filling our minds with elegant ideas about enlightenment. But if we spend all our time staring at the finger, we will never see the moon. The teachings are a raft, designed to carry you across the river of suffering to the other shore of liberation. Once you have reached the other shore, you do not strap the raft to your back and carry it around with you. You leave it behind and walk freely on the new land. And so, we bring our long conversation to a close. The voice you have been listening to, the master in this dialogue over tea, is not an external authority bestowing wisdom upon you. It is simply a finger pointing you back toward yourself. The real Zen master you have been seeking is not in a monastery on a distant mountain. The real master is the silent, spacious awareness that is reading these words right now. It is the stillness that exists between your thoughts. It is the quiet presence that was here before your first worry this morning and will be here after your last thought tonight. You do not need to go anywhere to find this master. You can find it in the feeling of your own breath, in the warmth of a cup in your hands, in a moment of genuine connection with another person, in a spontaneous act of kindness. The teacher is here. The treasure is here. You are already home. Our conversation began with a cup of coffee, trembling with the anxious, frantic energy of the modern world. We saw a mind overflowing with distraction, a heart thirsty for a peace it could not name. And so, we sat down together for a different kind of cup, a cup of tea, and embarked on a journey inward. We have traveled far. We learned to empty our cup with the humility of a beginner's mind, creating space for something new to enter. We sat on the bank of the mind's restless river and discovered that we are not the current, but the silent, watching presence. We found our anchor in the simple, profound rhythm of the breath, a constant refuge in the storms of life. We had the courage to look at the great truths of existence, the relentless flow of impermanence that teaches us to cherish the present, and the liberating emptiness of a fixed self, which frees us from the prison of the ego. We walked through the 4 great rooms of the physician's chamber, diagnosing the illness of suffering and its cause in our own thirst, and discovering the hopeful prognosis that an end to this suffering is possible through a clear and practical path. We learned to see the anger of others as the drift of an empty boat, to mend our own scars with the gold of self-compassion, and to find the sacred in the simple act of washing our bowl. We have traveled this long road together, from a sense of lack to a place of fullness, from seeking outside to discovering within. The cup of tea we have shared is now empty. The dialogue we have engaged in is drawing to a close, but the stillness it pointed to remains. If there is one single truth to take away from our time together, let it be this: peace is not a destination you arrive at after a long and arduous journey. It is not a prize to be won, a secret to be unlocked, or a heavenly state to be attained after death. It is a quality of presence. It is a way of being in the world that is available to you in this very moment, and this one, and this one. Peace is not the absence of storms in your life. The storms will always come. Peace is the discovery of an unshakable shelter in the very center of your own being, the quiet eye in the heart of the hurricane. It is the ability to stand firm with an open heart amidst the chaos. The voice that has been speaking to you, the guide on this journey, the so-called master, is ultimately not a person or an external authority. It is, and has always been, simply a finger pointing at the moon. The moon is the luminous, boundless wisdom of your own heart. The purpose of our conversation was never to have you admire the finger. It was to encourage you to look where it is pointing, inward. The journey does not end here. In truth, it has only just begun. The map has been laid out, the tools have been offered. The real practice is not in listening to these words, but in living them. So the question is no longer, what is the path to peace? The question, now and for the rest of your life, becomes, how will you walk it? How will you choose to meet your own anger? How will you befriend your fear? How will you practice patience in a world of haste? How will you find the sacred in your own ordinary life? The dialogue does not stop. It simply continues. Every day, with every breath you take, the tea is poured, the master is waiting, and the master is you.